Basic financial concepts you should understand.
Taxes. Picture this. Imagine you just had a hard month at work, slaving away flipping burgers at your local McDonald's. You're in bed when you get an email from them. It says you've been paid $2,000, but your bank account only gets $1,456. You scroll down the stub. Federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare. This is the modern ritual of giving away a chunk of your money to invisible forces, and they expect you to say thank you. Here's the deal. Taxes are the cost of civilization. You pay, the government builds roads, funds schools, makes sure your favorite taco truck isn't infested with rats, and sends billion-dollar missiles to places you've never been. But there are different types of taxes. Income tax, which hits the money you make. Sales tax, which hits the money you spend. Capital gains tax, which hits the money your investments made while you were asleep. The government takes a little bit of every dollar. Nearly everyone also pays Social Security tax and Medicare tax. Basically, Social Security tax is like the government forcing you to save for your retirement. They force you to save money now, and you get it paid back to you over time when you retire. Medicare, however, is a health insurance tax that goes to supporting older people or people with serious health issues. Now comes filing your taxes. Oh boy, the government knows how much you owe, but it makes you guess. How cool. If you're right, no worries. But if you're wrong, you're cooked. When it comes to actually paying taxes, some people pay every few months. Some people pay yearly. And then there's those people that don't pay at all and end up in documentaries. I get that taxes are annoying, but it's not all bad. Countries with higher tax rates generally have a higher quality of life all round.
Banks. So, you walk into a bank, hand the cashier your money, they count it, smile, and tell you it will be added to your account. You walk out and think, great, now it's sitting in a vault somewhere, being guarded by a dragon. But in reality, that money's already gone. Most people think of banks like a big safe with only one job, guarding people's money. But in reality, they are just a middleman or a matchmaker for financial transactions. When you deposited that $1,000, the bank took $900 of it and gave it to someone who wants to buy a jet ski. That system is called fractional reserve banking, which basically relies on the idea that they only actually need to keep a fraction of the money on hand because not everyone is going to show up at the same time asking to withdraw 100% of their account. That is, unless it's 2008, of course, when people lined up to withdraw the entirety of their account, which caused the entire system to crumble. Banks make money by lending your money at a higher interest rate than they are giving you. That's really it. You're the supply of money, and the person borrowing is the demand. The banks entice you to deposit your money because of a few reasons. It's much easier and more convenient to spend on a card or transfer than carrying around cash all the time. They are literally paying you to hold your money with them in the form of interest. It is much safer to keep your money in a bank than in a shoebox in your room. In the US, most banks are insured up to $250,000 per person, meaning no matter what, the government assures you that your money, up to $250K, is safe.
Interest. Imagine you borrow $1,000. You have to pay back $1,280. Why? Because of interest. Interest is money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. When you borrow, interest is the price tag for using someone else's cash. When you lend or save, interest is the reward for being patient and boring. There are two main types. Simple interest is like, here's a flat fee, thanks for playing. Compound interest is, every dollar I gave you now has clones, and they also want rent. Let's say you owe 20% interest on a credit card. You miss a payment. Now your interest is earning interest. Soon, your $12 burrito turns into a $50 regret. On the flip side, investing at 7% annual compound interest, that's your money duplicating itself like a cheat code. $100 becomes $200, then $400. Then one day you wake up and you're old, rich, and a little smug about it. This is why interest is the silent engine behind both wealth and debt. In loans, it's the slow burn that turns small mistakes into financial fires. In investments, it's the time bomb that turns small gains into massive wins. So what's the hack? If you're paying interest, kill it fast. If you're earning interest, let it sit, feed it, and give it time. Interest is either your worst enemy or your best unpaid employee. The choice is in who's collecting it. Inflation. Okay, so you bought a bag of chips. Open it up, and it looks like it's already been half eaten. You check what you paid, 30% higher than last time. Then you realize you've just been hit by inflation. Inflation is what happens when money slowly gets less valuable over time. Not overnight, not with fireworks, just a slow erosion. Your $5 bill, still technically $5, but it buys less instant noodles, less gas, and doesn't actually have as much value as it did before. So what actually causes it? Sometimes people just have too much money. Everyone's got cash, and they all want to spend it on the same stuff. Let's say 2,000 people want this $500 TV, but the business only has 1,000 TVs for sale. So the business goes, oh, everyone wants this TV? That'll be $800 now. Sometimes it's supply chains with hiccups or problems. making the cost of producing a good or service more expensive, meaning the cost of that good or service must rise. Or sometimes, just cause. Expectations can cause inflation. If people think prices are rising, they'll spend more now, driving prices up faster. It's a self-fulfilling economic prophecy. A little inflation is normal, even good. 2% a year? That's fine, predictable. But if it spikes, savings die, wages lag. The government tries to fight inflation when this occurs, by raising interest rates. When the government raises interest rates, people are paying more interest, or it's more expensive to get a loan, meaning they have less money to spend on things like TVs. This causes a reduction in the amount of spending, pretty much cooling off the economy.
Recessions.
A recession is when the economy decreases for at least 2 quarters or 6 months in simple terms. One day you're fine, you've got a job, bills are paid, you might even be planning a trip with the family, but suddenly there's layoffs, the stock market's only going down. In a recession, jobs vanish, companies cut costs, and everyone saves their money for necessities instead of buying things they don't need. Why does a recession happen? It could be a range of things. Could be high interest rates, making borrowing too expensive. Could be a global crisis, war, pandemic, rogue container ship. Could just be the economic cycle doing what it does best. Boom, peak, bust, reset. Think of the economy as a party. In the boom phase, everyone's dancing, drinks are flowing. But eventually, the lights flicker, reality hits, someone checks their bank account, and suddenly, the DJ's playing sad lo-fi beats about corporate downsizing. Recessions aren't forever, they're resets, painful ones. Governments might lower interest rates, send out stimulus, or just hope people start buying overpriced coffee again. Eventually, spending returns, businesses rebuild, growth resumes, but not without scars.
Credit scores. A credit score is a shadowy algorithm that knows your name, your past, and how many times you paid your credit card late in college. A 3-digit number that decides whether you get a house, a car, or a soul-crushing 27% interest rate on your new TV. This number isn't about wealth. It's about trust. Lenders want to know, if I give this person money, will they actually pay me back? The score has a range from 300 to 850. Below 580, you're a walking red flag. Over 750, you're sparkling with adult credibility. Most people? Stuck somewhere between 640 and 790. How is a credit score calculated? Payment history. Do you pay on time? This is the big one. Credit utilization. How much credit are you using versus how much you could? Credit age. How long you've had accounts. Credit mix. Cards, loans, mortgages. Variety helps. New credit. Too many recent applications? All of these things are the ways it is calculated. But to actually increase your score, you have to make the required payments on each of your loans before you enter the late period. If you enter the late period, your score decreases. Your credit score is like a pet dog. Ignore it, and it poops all over your life. Take care of it, and someday it might help you buy a house. It's not about being good with money. It's about looking good to lenders. You can have 0 debt and still have a trash score if you don't have a credit history. So yes, the game is rigged. But if you learn the rules, you can rig it back. Currency, or money.
The weird part about currency and or money is that it's actually not real. Humans have developed money in order to make the world better. Money makes trading easier, makes it easier to build systems and to organize society. In saying that, there is no more legitimacy between a dollar bill and a Bitcoin. People believe a dollar bill has more legitimacy, and maybe it does, for now, but only because people believe it does. The same can be said for a dollar bill and a stick. The only reason a dollar bill can buy something, and a stick cannot, is the fact that we as a society have agreed that a dollar bill is worth something, while a stick is not. So how does money actually work? Well, the government prints it, the central banks regulate it, and everyday people trade it in exchange for goods and or services. The reason the banks have to regulate it is because if the government prints too much, then inflation kicks in, and everyone's money becomes monopoly money. If the banks make it so there is too little money, no one can afford to live. Currency, or money, is a social construct built on a shared belief and trust. Investing. So you know what inflation is now, and the best way to combat inflation, so your money doesn't become less valuable, is investing. Investing is what happens when your money stops sitting around and starts working for you. Instead of trading your time for money, you're trading money for more money. The problem is there is risk involved. What can you actually buy? Stocks. Tiny ownership slices of companies. If the company grows, your slice becomes more valuable. Bonds. Basically, you loan money to a government or company, and they pay you back with interest. Funds. Collections of stocks and bonds so you don't have to play financial games one by one. Real estate. Property you hope someone else pays to live in.
forever. Of course, there are other things, but they are considered the main one. Investing isn't about being lucky. It's about being early, diversified, and patient. Most wealthy people didn't win the lottery. They just gave compound growth 30 years to do its thing. And yes, investing comes with risk. Markets go up, markets go down. But the real danger isn't losing money. It's never investing and watching inflation quietly steal your future. Value. This one is more complex, but everyone should understand it. Imagine you pick up a rock. It's just a rock. Now imagine that rock is shiny and yellow. That's gold. It's rarer than an average rock, so there's a higher value placed on it. Gold is not actually worth more than the average rock, it's just worth more to humans because we place a higher value on it. Understanding this is what allows people to become rich. If you provide a lot of value, you will earn a lot of money. Steve Jobs created the iPhone you're most likely watching this on right now. He created something with a large amount of value, so millions of people gave him thousands of dollars for that bit of value. It's the same reason that doctors and lawyers earn so much money. The value they provide is large, and people are willing to pay a large amount of money for their service. Value is the same reason Gucci or Louis Vuitton can sell the same handbag as Target, but charge 100 times the price. People perceive it as more valuable, so it is. If you can figure out how to create value, even if it's not real value, you can make a lot of money.
Time. Time is the most valuable asset in the world. And the best part? Almost everyone starts with a lot of it. You probably have a lot of it left. But no one gets an unlimited supply. Most people work jobs where time is traded directly for money. 1 hour, 1 paycheck. Simple math. The top earners have figured out how to make their time worth millions. And the difference isn't magic. It's skills, leverage, and how well you've trained your hours to work for you. But nowhere does time work harder than in investing. There is no greater force in wealth building. Not luck, not income, time. Because wealth isn't built in days, it's built in decades. Money that sits quietly in an investment doesn't just grow, it multiplies. Slowly at first, then faster. That's why ordinary people with modest paychecks can retire with 7 figures. They didn't beat the system, they used the system. A little money, invested consistently, given enough time, becomes a lot of money.
Mind-blowing paradoxes. The Baldman Paradox. So let's say you're standing in front of your bathroom mirror one morning, doing the usual routine, brushing your teeth, looking at yourself, wondering where it all went wrong. And then you notice it. A single hair fell out. Okay, no big deal. You've got thousands more. Still, a thought hits you. If 1 hair falling out doesn't make you bald, and 2 hairs falling out doesn't make you bald, then at what exact point does baldness officially begin? Is it after 100 hairs, 500, 5,000? At what number do you officially cross the line from guy with a bad haircut to guy who just went bald? Because here's the paradox. No single hair seems like the deal breaker. But if you keep following that logic, you'd have to say that even a man with 0 hairs on his head technically isn't bald. Which makes no sense. He's definitely bald. Unless you're Bruce Willis, in which case bald is just your final evolution. This is called a Sorites paradox, and it shows how fuzzy language can screw with logic. Bald isn't a precise scientific measurement. It's just a vague word we all kind of feel our way through, which means depending on who you ask, you might already be bald. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me know in the comments how many hairs on your head you have left until you classify as bald. The time travel paradox. All right, let's fire up the flux capacitor and talk about time travel for a second. Imagine you build a time machine. Not some crazy gadget. Yours looks like a busted washing machine duct taped to a lawnmower. But somehow it works. You set the dial for 1920, and poof, you're face-to-face with your grandfather before he ever had kids. Now, for reasons best left unexplored, maybe he gave you terrible Christmas gifts, maybe you just don't vibe with him, you decide to, take him out of the picture. Nothing personal, Grandpa, but you've been paradoxed. Here's the problem. If you succeeded, then your grandfather never had kids, which means your parents were never born, which means you were never born, which means you couldn't have gone back in time to do the deed in the first place, which means your grandfather is alive again? It's like a cosmic game of peekaboo where existence just glitches out. The paradox shows that time travel to the past breaks causality, which is the chain of cause and effect that reality is built on. Unless, of course, the multiverse exists. In that case, you didn't erase yourself. You just spawned a whole new universe where you're a monster and Grandma is single forever. Either way, if you're planning on traveling back in time, maybe just shake your grandfather's hand and thank him for surviving the Great Depression. Don't, erase your own family tree. The barber paradox. Picture this. You roll into a tiny, one-road town in the middle of nowhere. Population?
Probably like 43 people and a few wild animals. And in this town, there's exactly one barber. He's not just a barber, he's the barber. He cuts every man's hair, trims every beard, and shaves every face. But here's the deal. This barber has one very strict rule. He shaves all the men who do not shave themselves, and only those men. So if you're too lazy to shave, no problem, he'll do it for you. If you're the kind of guy who gets up at 5 a.m. and shaves himself clean, cool, you don't need him. Simple, right? Except who shaves the barber? If the barber shaves himself, then according to his rule, he shouldn't be shaving himself, because he only shaves men who don't shave themselves. But if he doesn't shave himself, then he falls into the group of men who must be shaved by the barber, which awkwardly is also him. No matter what he does, the rule breaks down. Basically, the barber is cursed to live in a paradox where he either shaves himself illegally, or he doesn't shave and still has to shave himself anyway. He's stuck in an endless cycle. Philosopher Bertrand Russell came up with this paradox to show how self-reference can completely derail logic. So, moral of the story, don't live in a town where the barber is both the hero and the villain.
The unexpected exam paradox. All right, let's go to school for this one. You're sitting in class, half asleep, doodling pictures of stickmen getting eaten by dinosaurs when your teacher suddenly says, "There will be a surprise exam next week. You won't know which day until I hand it out." At first, everyone panics, but then you start thinking. You're like, wait a second, this exam can't actually happen. You start breaking it down with some flawless logic. First, you eliminate Friday, because if Thursday rolls around and you haven't had the test yet, then obviously it's got to be Friday. But that means it wouldn't be a surprise, so it can't be Friday. Okay, cool. But if it can't be Friday, then it also can't be Thursday, because if it hasn't happened by Wednesday, Thursday would be the last possible day left, so it also wouldn't be a surprise. And using the same logic, you eliminate Wednesday, Tuesday, and finally even Monday. You smugly sit back like some kind of wish Sherlock Holmes and announce to your classmates, there will be no exam at all. Fast forward to Tuesday. You walk into class without your backpack, without a pencil, just vibes. And then, damn, the teacher slams a test down on your desk. You're caught completely off guard. Congratulations, you just failed the world's easiest paradox. This is the unexpected exam paradox, and it's basically a logic trap. If you try to outsmart the surprise, you reason yourself into believing the exam is impossible, but the very fact that you don't expect it anymore makes it possible again. Sometimes overthinking just cooks you.
The liar's paradox. Imagine you're at a party, and for some reason, instead of talking to normal people, you decide to corner everyone with logic puzzles. You stand up on a chair, raise your red solo cup like a king, and announce, "I am lying right now." At first, people just stare at you. Then the headache sets in. Because if the statement, "I am lying," is true, then you're lying, which means the statement isn't true. But if it's false, then you're telling the truth, which means it's true again. You're stuck in a perfect loop of brain static where the words cancel themselves out, and everyone at the party suddenly regrets inviting you. This is the liar's paradox, and it's one of the oldest logic breakers in history. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece, where a philosopher named Epimenides, who, fun fact, was himself a Cretan, declared, "All Cretans are liars," which immediately raises the question, if he's telling the truth, then he must be lying. But if he's lying, then some Cretans must be telling the truth. And if you're not lost yet, congratulations, you're lying to yourself. So if you're ever tempted to bust this one out at a party, just remember, it doesn't make you look like a genius, it just makes everyone else quietly move away from you. The indescribable paradox. The word indescribable was created so that nothing can be truly indescribable. Think about that one for a moment. The moment you call something indescribable, you've literally just described it. If it truly couldn't be described, you wouldn't be able to slap a label on it in the first place. So either the thing isn't actually indescribable, or the word itself is lying. The Monty Hall paradox. All right, let's play a game. You're on a cheesy 70s game show, standing under hot studio lights while wearing a suit. The host, Monty Hall, greets you with a big smile and points to 3 doors. Behind one door, a brand new car. Behind the other 2, goats. You pick a door, let's say door number 1. Monty, who knows what's behind all of them, opens another door, say door number 3, and reveals a goat. Then he looks at you with his big game show grin and says, "Do you want to stick with your door or switch to the other one?" Now here's where the paradox kicks in. Most people say it doesn't matter. 2 doors left, 1 car, 1 goat. It's 50-50, right? Wrong. Switching actually doubles your odds of winning the car. If you stick with your first choice, you only have a 1 in 3 chance. But if you switch, you've got a 2 in 3 chance. Why? Because when you first picked, there was a 1 in 3 shot you chose the car, and a 2 in 3 shot you chose a goat.
Monty's reveal doesn't reset those odds. It just hands you extra information. If you picked a goat originally, which is twice as likely, switching saves you. If you pick the car, switching loses it. The math says switching wins in the long run. And yet, even when people are told the math, most still stay with their gut choice. That's the real paradox. Human brains hate probability. We'd rather cling to our first bad decision than trust logic, which, come to think of it, explains dating, stock trading, and nearly all tattoos.
The birthday paradox. Okay, here's one that always blows people's mind. The birthday paradox. You're in a room with 23 people. Pretty small, right? That's not even a full classroom. But get this. There's a 50% chance that two of those people share the exact same birth. Now, your gut immediately screams, no way. After all, there are 365 days in a year, 366 if you're one of those rare leap day mutants. So how could such a tiny group of people have matching birthdays? But that's where probability tricks us. See, you're not just comparing each person to one specific date. You're comparing every person to every other person in the... With 23 people, there are 253 possible pairings. That's 253 chances for a match. It's like flipping a coin. If you only flip once, odds are slim it lands on heads. But flip it a few hundred times, suddenly it's basically guaranteed. And the numbers get crazier. With 30 people, the odds jump to around 70%. With 50 people, it's a 97% chance someone shares a birthday. By the time you hit 75 people, it's almost certain. Which means if you're ever at a wedding and the DJ says, "Who here has the same birthday?" odds are at least two drunk dudes are about to high-five. This paradox works because our brains are absolute garbage at understanding probability. We think in terms of one-on-one comparisons, when in reality the odds explode once you scale up the combinations. That's why casinos exist, and why math teachers cry themselves to sleep at night.
The shuffling paradox. All right, grab a deck of cards. Go ahead. I'll wait. Now shuffle it. Congrats. You've probably just created something that has never existed before in the history of the universe. Sounds dramatic, but here's the math. There are 52 cards in a deck, and the number of possible ways to arrange them is 52 factorial. That's every number between 52 and 1 multiplied by each other. Do the math and you'll get an 8 followed by 67 zeros. To put that in perspective, that's more possible shuffles than there are atoms in our entire galaxy. So every time you shuffle a deck, odds are astronomically high that the exact order of cards in your hand has never existed before in the history of the universe. Not in Vegas, not in Monte Carlo, not in your family poker nights, never. And the kicker? It will never exist again either. You just created a unique cosmic arrangement. This is the shuffling paradox. Something as simple and ordinary as mixing a deck of cards is actually one of the rarest, most unique events you will ever cause. You think you're just killing time, but mathematically speaking, you just did something that will never happen again in all of history.
Rare DNA traits you might have.
Lesch-Nyhan syndrome. You start noticing the signs early. A strange compulsion to bite your lips, gnaw your fingers, bang your head against hard surfaces when you get frustrated. Not tantrums, reflexes. It's like your brain is issuing commands without consulting you. You want to stop, but you can't. It feels like there's a gremlin inside your motor cortex, pushing buttons just to see what happens. And all of it traces back to a single missing enzyme, one tiny chemical your body failed to make. Without it, your brain chemistry spirals. You build up uric acid like a soda bottle shaken too hard. Your joints hurt. Your emotions are volatile. But the worst part? People assume you're dangerous or unstable. They don't see the fight you're having with your own wiring every single day. Stoneman syndrome. You trip over a sidewalk curb and bang your hip. It's sore the next day, then swollen, then it starts to harden. At first you think it's scar tissue, but over time the joint stops moving altogether. Weeks later, your shoulder stiffens too. You go in for surgery to fix it, only to find out it's made everything worse. That's when the diagnosis drops. Fibrodysplasia, ossificans progressiva, FOP. Your body has decided to heal every bruise by laying down bone, fusing muscles and joints like they're part of some post-apocalyptic armor set. Every injury becomes a construction site. Every surgery a red flag that triggers more bone growth. Eventually, you can't lift your arms. Later, your jaw freezes shut. You're becoming less person, more monument, an accidental statue sculpted by your immune system's paranoia. Hypertrichosis. You're born with more hair than most men have at 30. It's not just your head. Your cheeks, arms, back, even eyelids grow thick, dark strands. As a toddler, you look like you wandered out of folklore. At school, the jokes start early. Werewolf, Beast Boy, circus act. You laugh them off, but it stings. Your body never got the shutdown code that tells most hair follicles to chill after birth. Instead, they're in overdrive, growing, spreading, thriving like tiny forests. You try waxing, shaving, laser removal, but it always grows back. Doctors take photos. Some researchers call it an atavism, a trait from distant ancestors resurfacing, a glimpse into humanity's hairier past. You're a genetic throwback in a modern world, caught between science and myth. LRP5 mutation, unbreakable bones. You don't realize you're different until your first real fall. Maybe it's off a tree, maybe it's during a football game. Everyone panics, but you stand up, brush yourself off, and keep going. The X-ray comes back with no fractures, not even a hairline crack. That's when doctors notice your bones are unusually dense, 2-3 times denser than normal. It's not just luck, it's the LRP5 gene mutated in your favor. Your skeleton is like reinforced concrete. Most people break under pressure. You bounce. But strength has its quirks. When you swim, you don't float, you sink. MRIs struggle to read you. Dentists complain your teeth wear out drills. You're a walking paradox, invulnerable, but weirdly incompatible with the rest of human hardware. DEC2 mutation, no sleep needed. You go to bed at midnight and wake up at 4 a.m., completely refreshed. No grogginess, no caffeine dependence, no foggy mornings. While everyone else needs a gallon of coffee and a motivational podcast to get moving, you've already journaled, worked out, and replied to every email in your inbox. You don't try to be productive. You just don't need the downtime. Your body has a mutation in the DEC2 gene that changes your sleep architecture. Less time in bed, more time in REM. Your rest cycles are more efficient, like an internal Tesla battery that charges in half the time. People call you superhuman. You call it Tuesday. The world moves slow around you. You're not restless. You're just genetically optimized to stay awake while everyone else hits pause. Tetrachromacy. You're the only one in the room arguing about whether the sky is more periwinkle or cornflower. People think you're being pretentious until they realize you're literally seeing colors they can't. Your eyes aren't defective, they're enhanced. Most humans have 3 kinds of cone cells for color perception. You have 4. That extra cone unlocks a whole new dimension of visual nuance. Gradients invisible to others pop like neon to you. Beige is never just beige. It's wheat, sand, bone, champagne, and 15 shades in between. You see differences that make no sense to anyone else. Choosing paint becomes existential. Fashion coordination, a living nightmare. You live in a world full of colors unnamed, beauty unnoticed, wavelengths unacknowledged. And sometimes you wish you could switch it off, but most of the time, it feels like having a private window into reality's hidden spectrum. Methemoglobinemia. Your skin has a bluish tint, like you've just emerged from a cold lake or a fantasy novel. You're not sick, you're not hypothermic, you're just blue. It's not makeup, it's chemistry. Your blood isn't carrying oxygen quite like it should. Thanks to a rare genetic hiccup, your hemoglobin's iron isn't binding oxygen normally, so the oxygen just sits in your bloodstream, awkwardly uninvited to the party. The result, your skin takes on a purplish blue hue, your lips go navy, and ER doctors panic. You're healthy, just unusually pigmented. In some families, it's been passed down for generations, like the famous Fugate family of Kentucky. Locals called them the blue people. You just call it home. Myostatin-related hypertrophy. You're born with a six-pack, not a baby fat roll with optimism, actual muscle definition. As you grow, the gym becomes less of a challenge and more of a joke. You build strength like others build allergies, rapidly and without trying. Your secret? A mutation that blocks myostatin, the protein that tells muscles when to stop growing. With no break in place, your muscle tissue expands freely. You're stronger than you look, and you already look like an action figure. No supplements, no lifting regimes. You were born pre-buff. Coaches want to train you. Scientists want to study you. You're living proof that the human body has its own hidden power mode, and you weren't upgraded. You were born this way. Trimethylaminuria, fish odor syndrome. You scrub, soak, rinse, repeat, but the smell never fully goes away. People wrinkle their noses. You pretend not to notice. You've changed soaps, cut out fish from your diet, avoided eggs, beans, anything sulfur-rich. Nothing works. Your body just can't break down a compound called trimethylamine, the molecule responsible for the distinct stench of decaying seafood. So it builds up, leaks out through your sweat, your breath, your urine. Doctors say it's harmless. Your social life disagrees. You don't lack hygiene. You lack an enzyme. That's it. And it's enough to make every human interaction feel like a test you didn't know you were taking. You become a master of distance, of managing perception, of quiet exits. Not because you want to, but because your genes forced you to. EEC syndrome. Clawed hands and missing teeth. Your hands are shaped differently. 2 fingers, maybe 3. They curl in ways people don't expect. You were born this way, limbs that don't follow the standard design. Your baby teeth come in late. Your adult teeth, maybe never. Sunlight burns your eyes. Your skin cracks easily. EEC syndrome doesn't pick just one system to mess with. It disrupts many. Skin, nails, limbs, hair, teeth. Tear ducts. It's a mutation that treats the human blueprint like a jazz solo, improvising wildly. You adapt. You learn how to hold tools differently, how to read faces, how to push back when people assume your body reflects your ability. The world wasn't built for you, but you build your own way through it. Situs inversus, flipped organs. The doctor places the stethoscope on your left side. Silence. Confused, they check the machine. Everything's normal, just backward. Your heart beats on the right. Your liver sits on the left. Your stomach, your spleen, your entire internal layout has been mirrored like a flipped photo. It's not painful. It's not dangerous. It's just confusing. This is situs inversus, a rare condition where your organs develop on the opposite side from normal. For most people, it's discovered by accident, on an X-ray, during surgery, or when someone panics thinking your heart is missing. You're perfectly healthy, just spatially unconventional. You live in a body built like a mirrored map, proof that biology doesn't always care about compass directions. Congenital insensitivity to pain. You don't remember the first time you should have cried. Maybe it was when you touched a hot radiator, or when you tripped and cracked your collarbone. Your parents panicked, but you just stood there, curious, not alarmed, because you weren't in pain. You've never been in pain. At first, it seems like a superpower. You're the kid who doesn't cry at vaccines, the teenager who laughs off sprained ankles, the adult who doesn't need anesthesia for a root canal. But soon, the cracks in that fantasy show. Literally. Your body gets hurt, but without pain to guide you, you don't stop. You don't limp, you don't flinch, you don't learn. You pick scabs until they bleed, bite your tongue until it splits. This isn't numbness. Your nerves still carry touch, heat, texture. You feel pressure, you feel temperature, you just don't feel the alarm. And worst of all, there's no fix, no pill, no therapy. You don't get better, you get careful. You become your own detective. You train yourself to be suspicious of comfort. You build an internal system of checks and balances because the one you were born without can't be downloaded later. You learn that invincibility doesn't mean safety. It just means you never hear the fire alarm when the house starts burning.
Totally incorrect facts you might still believe.
Goldfish only have a 3-second memory. Despite what you've been told, goldfish aren't brain-dead swimmers forgetting every 3 seconds. They actually have months-long memory and can recognize faces, patterns, and even feeding schedules. In lab tests, scientists trained goldfish to push levers for food and navigate tiny mazes. And weeks later, they still remembered the trick. They even react differently to people who feed them versus strangers. The 3-second memory idea came from lazy pet owners and a 1950s pop science article that made up the number. In reality, goldfish have a surprisingly complex brain for their size, with learning centers wired like other vertebrates. If yours swims to the glass when you walk in, that's not instinct, that's recognition. So yeah, your goldfish remembers more about you than you think.
The Great Wall of China is visible from space. It's one of the longest structures ever built, and one of the most exaggerated. The claim that you can see it from space dates back to a 1930s British textbook, long before anyone actually went there. Astronauts later confirmed, you can't see it unaided. The wall is too narrow, only a few meters wide, built from local stone and clay that blend perfectly into the surrounding terrain. Even from low Earth orbit, it looks like a natural ridge. What is visible are cities, roads, and airports, because they reflect sunlight and have contrast. The wall doesn't. You can pick it up with a telephoto lens under perfect lighting, but that's not naked eye from space. NASA's verdict? No, you can't. It's still a masterpiece of human engineering. You just can't see it from space unaided.
Hair and nails keep growing after death. This one's just creepy, but also a pure myth. Hair and nails do not grow after you die. Your skin just shrinks and dries out, creating the illusion of growth. The cells responsible for fingernails and hair production need oxygen and blood flow, both of which vanish quickly after death. Within hours, everything biological stops. But dehydration causes the skin to pull back, exposing more of the nail bed and hair shaft, which makes them look longer. Early morticians saw that and assumed post-mortem growth. The illusion stuck, helped by storytelling. In truth, the only thing growing in a corpse is bacteria. So when people talk about coffins with long fingernails, they're really describing shrink-wrapped skin and bad lighting.
If you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it can kill someone. Nope, air resistance saves the day. A falling penny isn't a bullet. It's a featherweight coin with drag. Once it hits terminal velocity, around 25 to 30 miles per hour, it stops accelerating and just flutters like a lazy dart. It might sting, maybe bruise, but it's not punching through your skull. The shape keeps it tumbling and flipping, spreading the air resistance evenly. Mythbusters literally launched pennies off the Empire State Building. None penetrated fruit, gel, or even cardboard. For a coin to kill,
It'd need to fall in vacuum conditions, where there's no air drag, so basically on the moon. On Earth, the only real danger is getting arrested for throwing things off skyscrapers.
Bulls hate the color red. The matador's red cape isn't a rage trigger, it's a tradition and camouflage. Bulls are dichromats, meaning they see limited color. They can't even distinguish red from green. What actually sets them off is motion, not color. The waving fabric, the human posture, and the roar of the crowd all jack up their stress level. In tests, stationary red cloths got ignored. Moving blue or white ones got charged. The bull versus red myth stuck because it's cinematic. A bright color makes the scene pop. The real truth is that the bull's not angry at the color. It's confused, provoked by muscle reacting to movement. So if you walk past a bull in a red shirt, don't worry. If it moves, that's the problem.
We use only 10% of our brains.
The myth that we only use 10% of our brains is completely false. MRI scans show activity all over the brain, even during rest. There's no dark, dormant 90% waiting to unlock psychic powers. The myth likely came from early 1900s psychology misquotes. William James once said humans rarely reach their full potential, and pop writers turned that into we use 10%. In reality, even simple actions such as standing, blinking, remembering your password involve networks across multiple regions. Evolution doesn't waste energy. Gray matter is expensive to run. You're using 100%, just not all at once. So no, you can't unlock the other 90% of your brain anytime soon.
Eating sugar makes kids hyper. Every parent swears it's true, but every study says it isn't. Controlled trials show no measurable link between sugar intake and hyperactivity. The real cause is context. Birthday parties, playgrounds, chaos, excitement. Parents expect sugar highs, so they see them. It's the placebo effect in action. In double-blind studies, kids on sugar-free diets acted just as wild when parents thought they'd eaten sugar. That's expectation bias, not biochemistry. Picture a kid at a birthday party. Most parents would think that they are excited and energetic because of the cake and food they have been eating. But it is actually just the fact they are at a party. The crash after the party? That's just exhaustion.
Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. It makes sense when you think of it. Constantly cracking the bones in your fingers would negatively affect them over time. But the popping sound isn't bone grinding. It's gas bubbles collapsing inside your joint fluid. When you stretch your fingers, the pressure in the joint drops, forming bubbles in the synovial fluid. They collapse milliseconds later with that sharp pop. Studies tracking chronic knuckle crackers for decades found zero increase in arthritis. The worst you get is mild swelling or a weaker grip if you overdo it. The myth started because people equated loud joint noise with damage. In truth, cracking your knuckles is just joint hydraulics doing its thing. If it hurts or swells, that's a real issue. Otherwise, you're fine. Touching baby birds makes their mothers abandon them. Bird moms aren't that fragile. Most species have a terrible sense of smell and don't recognize human scent at all. If you handle a chick and put it back, the parents either don't notice or don't care. The myth comes from well-meaning parents who saw a bird left alone and assumed it was abandoned. In reality, chicks often leave the nest early and hop around while learning to fly. Parents feed them nearby. The real danger isn't your scent, it's stress or injury from too much handling. So if you find a chick, don't kidnap it. Just place it back and let nature resume her shift. Humans evolved from chimps. Despite what you think is true, it's actually not. Chimps are our cousins, not our ancestors. Humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor that lived roughly 6 to 7 million years ago. That ancestor split into two evolutionary lines, one leading to modern chimps and bonobos, the other to early hominins like Australopithecus, and eventually Homo sapiens. Evolution doesn't work like a ladder. It's a branching tree. We didn't come from chimps any more than birds came from modern lizards. The myth stuck because of old linear charts that looked like an ape slowly straightening into a man. Real evolution is messy, full of dead ends, hybrids, and sideways experiments. Diamonds are made from coal. That's the story every school kid hears. Intense pressure turns coal into diamond. Sounds poetic. It's also completely wrong. Coal forms from dead plants buried in swamps,
a few 100 million years old and locked in Earth's crust. Most diamonds, on the other hand, are over 1 billion years older, forged deep in Earth's mantle, about 100 miles down, under immense heat and pressure where no plant has ever existed. They form from pure carbon, not fossilized vegetation, and reach the surface through volcanic eruptions called kimberlite pipes. Different material, different process, different era. Only a microscopic handful of industrial diamonds have ever come from coal under lab conditions. So no, diamonds aren't made from coal. They're born from ancient carbon cooked by the planet itself.
Sugar causes diabetes. That's the story. Eat too much sugar, get diabetes. Simple, scary, and wrong. There are two main types of diabetes, and neither is directly caused by sugar. Type 1 is an autoimmune glitch, where your immune system attacks your pancreas, wiping out insulin-producing cells. Sugar has nothing to do with it. Type 2 happens when your body stops responding properly to insulin, usually after years of excess calories, poor sleep, stress, and inactivity. Sure, a diet full of sugar can speed that process up by packing on fat and overloading your system, but it's not the trigger. You could say it's the fuel on the fire. The real villain is chronic energy overload, not one food. You could cut sugar completely and still develop diabetes if you're sedentary and overeat. So no, sugar doesn't cause diabetes. Your lifestyle does.
Gum stays in your body for 7 years.
This one's funny to think about, but again, completely wrong. Your stomach isn't a storage locker. Gum passes through your system almost exactly like anything else you can't digest. It just doesn't break down. The base of chewing gum is made from synthetic polymers, kind of like edible rubber. Your body can't dissolve it, but it also doesn't hoard it. It moves through your digestive tract in a few days and exits the normal way. The 7 years myth came from parents trying to scare kids out of swallowing gum. Unless you down an entire packet once and block your intestines, gum won't stick around.
Opposites attract. This sounds romantic and looks great in movies, but it fails completely in real life. Study after study shows people are drawn to similarity, not difference, having the same values, humor, education, politics, even facial features. Psychologists call it the similarity attraction effect. We like people who reflect us, not our opposites. Sure, a loud extrovert might briefly fall for a quiet introvert, but long-term couples tend to share worldviews and habits. Opposites can attract initially because they're novel, but novelty fades. Friction doesn't. That mixed and matched chemistry usually ends up falling apart. Real compatibility comes from shared wavelength, not polarity.
You shouldn't subscribe. This one's common knowledge. It's believed that there's no point subscribing to a channel because their videos will just appear once again on your homepage. But this is incorrect. Subscribing and liking the video gives YouTube even more knowledge about what you are interested in. So, subscribe.
Complex everyday things, simply explained. How does Wi-Fi actually work? Wi-Fi sends tiny waves through the air, kind of like radio but faster. Your router takes internet stuff, like videos or messages, turns it into ones and zeros, and blasts it out using these waves. Your phone catches those waves, reads the ones and zeros, and turns them into cat videos. Magic? Kind of. Your phone doesn't just listen, it talks back, like, play the next video. Open that app. It sends its own waves back to the router. So it's like a super fast conversation, happening billions of times per second. You may be wondering how your phone and the router don't get confused with all the other phones and routers. I'll explain. Simple. Channels. Your Wi-Fi picks a lane, and theirs picks a different one. Newer Wi-Fi is even smarter. It focuses signals straight at your phone, like a laser. Pew pew! Can people steal your Wi-Fi? Not really, because it's locked with a secret code. Only your phone and router know the password, so anyone else just hears scrambled noise. And that's Wi-Fi. Invisible waves that carry memes, videos, and your search history through the air. Now you know.
How do credit cards work?
Credit cards are weird. You just swipe a piece of plastic and boom, you just bought a $7 iced coffee using money you don't have. How is that possible? Well, a credit card is basically saying, hey bank, spot me $7 real quick. I swear I'll pay you back. And the bank's like, okay, but if you don't, I'm charging you interest and maybe your soul. You're not spending your money, you're borrowing the bank's money and paying it back later. When you tap, swipe, or insert the card, your card sends your card number plus secret chip info to the store's payment system. The store says, hey bank, is this person good for $7? The bank checks your account and says, yep, send it through. Or, nope, decline. Shame them publicly. At the end of the month, your bank sends you a bill for everything you borrowed. If you pay it all back, no problem. If you don't, you pay interest, which is basically a crazy tax for not paying on time. The longer you wait, the more you owe. like a financial snowball that only rolls downhill fast. Some cards give you rewards like points, cash back, or airline miles. Cool, right? Except if you forget to pay and get charged interest, you just spent $500 in airline points to buy a $6 granola bar. So, yeah, credit cards are like magical rectangles that buy stuff now, make you pay later, and charge you if you mess up. Use it right equals good credit score. Use it wrong equals you owe Visa your kidney.
Why are people left-handed? Only about 10% of people are left-handed, but why? Your brain has two halves, left and right. And get this, the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and the right side controls the left. In most people, the left brain is the boss, so they end up right-handed. But in lefties, the right brain is a little louder, so the left hand gets the spotlight. That's it.
How do planes stay in the air? Okay, so planes are metal sky whales that weigh hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they just float? You're telling me a flying tube full of people, luggage, and tiny pretzels doesn't fall straight out of the sky? Let's unpack. Planes' wings use something called lift, which is a fancy science word for air pushing you up harder than gravity pulls you down. Here's the trick. The top of the wing is curved. The bottom is flat. Air moves faster over the top, slower under the bottom. This creates low pressure on top and high pressure underneath. And boom, the plane gets pushed up like a balloon getting punched from below. That's lift, the reason planes yeet themselves into the sky and stay there. The engines, or the giant spinny jet vacuums, create thrust. They push the plane forward really fast. The faster you go, the more air hits the wings, the more lift you get. No speed equals no lift equals metal sky whale becomes metal ground pancake. Planes fly because of four forces. Lift pushes up, weight pulls down, thrust pushes forward, drag tries to ruin your life. Those little flaps on the wings, they move to change how much lift you get. During takeoff and landing, the wings go full transformer mode to stay stable.
How do dreams work? Dreams are straight up weird. You go to sleep thinking about breakfast and wake up like, I just gave birth to a dragon on a trampoline while my third grade teacher cheered. How? Why? When you knock out for the night, your body rests, but your brain still cooking. In fact, it goes harder when you're asleep. During a phase called REM sleep, or rapid eye movement, your brain starts lighting up like a Christmas tree on Red Bull. That's when dreams happen. Your brain has a giant simulation engine built in. During REM, it replays memories, smashes random thoughts together, runs fake scenarios, and throws in your ex for no reason. It's like your brain goes, all right, time to test some stuff that makes absolutely no sense. Boom. Dream. Scientists don't really know why we dream, but here are the top theories. Memory sorting. Dreams help organize your thoughts like a messy desktop. Emotional therapy. Your brain's like, let's process that trauma by turning it into a talking walrus. Threat practice. Ancient brain says, let's rehearse being chased by tigers, just in case. Honestly, it might be all of them at once, because your brain's logic filter is asleep too. During dreaming, the part that says, that doesn't make sense, is off, so anything goes. You can fly, breathe underwater, or fight dinosaurs with a spoon. Totally normal. Dreams are your brain's way of processing, simulating, and playing out life.
What even is a black hole?
Black holes are the final boss of space. Like, imagine something so heavy, so dense, so extra that not even light can escape it. You shine a flashlight at a black hole, too bad. That light is gone, yeeted into the abyss, deleted from reality. Take a giant star. Now let it live its life, burn through its fuel, and get old and cranky. Eventually, the star goes supernova explosion, and the middle part collapses. But it doesn't just collapse, it implodes into itself like a cosmic sinkhole until it's infinitely small. This creates a black hole, a spot in space with so much gravity that it just eats everything. Black holes don't suck stuff in, they pull stuff in with pure gravity. Like Earth's gravity keeps the moon in orbit, a black hole's gravity is like, hey moon, come here, forever. Even light, which is the fastest thing in the universe, can't outrun it. That's why they're black, because light literally can't bounce back out. At the center is the singularity, a point that's infinitely dense and where physics just gives up. Time, broken. Space, bent, like spaghetti. Your understanding of reality, gone. Surrounding it is the event horizon, the point of no return. Once you cross it, game over. No signal, no comeback, just silence. Black holes are space vacuum cleaners that broke the laws of physics.
How do microwaves actually cook food? Microwaves don't heat food like a fire or oven. Instead, they shoot invisible waves, called, wait for it, microwaves, into your food. These are electromagnetic waves, just like light and X-ray, but chunkier. They specifically target one thing, water. Why? Because water molecules are tiny, weird little dumbbells with a positive side and a negative side, like emotional people. When microwaves hit them, they start vibrating like they just heard a Taylor Swift breakup song, millions of times per second. That movement creates friction, and friction makes heat. Stuff with more water, like soup, heats fast. Stuff with no water, like dry bread, gets weird. Ever microwaved pizza crust? It turns into a tire. That's why. Also, microwaves don't go very deep, only about an inch or two. So, that frozen lasagna, yeah, the outside's boiling, but the inside's still an ice cube.
You may be wondering,
Why does the plate spin? Because microwaves bounce around unevenly inside the box. If it didn't spin, half your food would be magma, the other half would still be in hibernation. So that little turntable, it's the real MVP, keeping your food from becoming a crime against God. So yeah, your microwave cooks food by violently shaking water molecules with invisible waves.
how does YouTube know what you want to watch? YouTube is scary. You watch one video about raccoons, and suddenly your homepage is like, here's 87 more raccoons. Also, raccoons driving cars. Also, raccoons in space. How does it know? Every time you click, tap, pause, rewind, or cry during a video, YouTube takes notes. What you watched, how long you watched it, what you clicked before and after, whether you liked, commented, or just dipped halfway through. It's not a website. It's a stalker with a clipboard. YouTube's goal? Get you to click and stay. If you click but don't watch for long, no bueno. If you watch forever but didn't click, also meh. But if you click and binge, like it's Netflix in 2013, the algorithm's like, send this person more. Feed them. Your homepage is built by a supercomputer on energy drinks that mixes what you like, what people like you like, what's trending, what you watched 3 years ago at 2 a.m. during a crisis. And yes, it remembers everything. Even that video you regret watching. You know the one. YouTube also compares your habits to millions of other people. If 800,000 people who watched How to Tie a Tie also clicked on How to Adult, YouTube's like, welp, must be related. Recommends it to you instantly. It doesn't know why you want it. It just knows you do. YouTube suggests videos using a brain-melting algorithm, all to keep you watching forever. YouTube doesn't care what you watch. It just wants you to not stop.
Every drug and its effects explained.
Caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant, a chemical that speeds up your brain and nervous system. It's found in coffee, tea, soda, and energy drinks, powering billions of people every morning. For most, it isn't just a drink. It's a ritual. The day doesn't begin until that first sip hits. Once you drink it, caffeine enters your bloodstream and quickly travels to your brain. There, it blocks a chemical called adenosine, which is what tells your brain it's tired. So caffeine doesn't give you energy, it just hides your exhaustion. Your neurons start firing faster, your heart beats stronger, and suddenly you feel sharper, more alive. Within 20 to 30 minutes, the peak kicks in. You're focused, energized, and motivated. The world feels clearer, easier, more controllable. It's not euphoria, it's confidence in a cup. But as your body breaks it down, adenosine floods back, and you crash. That clear focus fades into irritability, jitteriness, and the creeping thought that maybe one more coffee will fix it. Caffeine is mildly addictive, but it hides behind routine. Over time, your brain adjusts and stops producing as much natural alertness. You need more caffeine to feel normal. Quit suddenly and you'll notice it. Headaches, fatigue, and brain fog. We joke about needing coffee to live, but that's withdrawal disguised as culture. The truth is, caffeine doesn't wake you up. It just delays your tiredness until later. Nicotine. Nicotine is a fast-acting stimulant found in tobacco and vapes. The chemical that hooks people, not the smoke itself. It's inhaled through smoke or vapor, and within seconds it hits the brain, releasing a surge of dopamine, the chemical that makes you feel calm, focused, and content. At first, it feels perfect. Your heart rate rises just a little, your thoughts clear up, and stress melts away. That's the onset. A brief, clean high that feels controlled. For a few minutes, your brain runs smoother. But nicotine burns out quickly. As dopamine fades, the calm turns into tension, restlessness, and a craving for another hit. That's the come down. and it's what keeps people chained to the cycle. Each puff gives temporary relief from the discomfort that the last puff created. That's the trap. Nicotine doesn't actually relax you. It just resets withdrawal. Your brain learns that peace only exists between cravings. Over time, nicotine changes how your brain releases dopamine, meaning without it, everything feels dull and flat. Physically, it damages your lungs, blood vessels, and heart, but mentally, it's even worse. It convinces you that you can't cope without it.
Alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant, meaning it slows down your brain and nervous system. It's drunk everywhere. At parties, dinners, celebrations, commiserations. People drink to loosen up, to forget, or just to belong. Once it enters your bloodstream, it starts disrupting how your brain communicates with itself. At first, that feels good. The onset brings warmth, relaxation, and a sense of confidence. You feel more open, more social. Your thoughts quiet down, your body relaxes, and the moment feels easy. For a while, alcohol seems like the key to connection. Then comes the peak. Judgment fades, emotions rise. You talk louder, laugh harder, maybe cross lines you wouldn't sober. The body starts losing balance, coordination slips, but the brain still feels like everything's fine. That's the illusion. Alcohol slows your brain while convincing you you're still in control. Eventually, the come-down hits. The fun tilts into exhaustion. The warmth turns heavy. The buzz turns blurry. Hours later, you're dehydrated, nauseous, and foggy. The next morning, your brain chemistry crashes completely. The hangover. Alcohol is addictive in quiet, familiar ways. The more often you drink, the more your brain expects it to relax. Soon you're not drinking for fun, but just to feel normal. Over time, it damages your liver, weakens your heart, and erodes your self-control. It's a chemical that makes you feel alive, while slowly dulling everything that makes you human. Cannabis. Cannabis is a psychoactive drug made from the marijuana plant. It's most often smoked, vaped, or eaten as an edible. The main active chemical is THC, which interacts with the brain's endocannabinoid system, the network that regulates mood, memory, and perception. When THC enters the bloodstream, it rushes to the brain and binds to receptors that normally handle natural chemicals called anandamides, molecules that help you feel relaxed and balanced. That's when the onset hits. Time slows down, your senses sharpen, and everything feels slightly funnier, warmer, softer. At its peak, cannabis can heighten creativity and calm, or tip into confusion and paranoia depending on the dose and mindset. Music sounds deeper, colors feel stronger, and ideas seem profound. It's a distortion of normal reality that feels both dreamy and focused at once. As the come-down begins, thought slows, speech drifts, and tiredness sets in. For some, it's gentle. For others, it's heavy, an invisible fog that lingers into the next morning. Cannabis is mildly addictive, but mostly psychologically. Regular use can dull motivation, mess with short-term memory, and in heavy doses, trigger anxiety or panic. It's often called harmless, but it quietly reshapes how your brain rewards relaxation.
Cocaine. Cocaine is a powerful stimulant made from coca leaves. It's most commonly snorted as a white powder, but can also be smoked or injected. Once it enters the bloodstream, it floods the brain with dopamine, blocking your body from reabsorbing it. Suddenly, your brain is drowning in pleasure signals. The onset is almost instant, a rush of euphoria, energy, and confidence. Your heart pounds, your pupils widen, and your brain feels electric. Every thought feels brilliant. Every move feels perfect. You feel untouchable. At the peak, you're fast, focused, and alive. But the brain's reward system is already burning through its fuel. The high is sharp and short. Within minutes, dopamine levels crash, and the come-down slams in. Anxiety rises, mood drops, and exhaustion hits. You crave more just to feel normal again. Cocaine is highly addictive. The brain quickly learns to link it with pleasure, motivation, and control. But it's an illusion. Each hit rewires you to need another. Over time, it damages the heart, constricts blood vessels, and rewires brain chemistry so deeply that joy without it feels impossible. MDMA. MDMA, better known as ecstasy or Molly, is a synthetic stimulant and hallucinogen. It's usually swallowed as a pill or capsule at parties or clubs. The chemical floods your brain with serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, the trio responsible for happiness, reward, and connection. As the onset begins, warmth spreads through your body. Music sounds richer, lights shimmer, and touch feels electric. You feel deeply connected to friends, to strangers, to everything around you. The brain is running on maximum empathy. At the peak, serotonin levels spike and the world feels perfect. You dance for hours. You talk non-stop. You feel infinite. But MDMA burns through the brain's supply of serotonin so fast that within hours, the come-down starts. Emotion drains out of you, replaced by emptiness, sadness, or exhaustion. The high leaves as suddenly as it arrived. Used too often, MDMA damages the neurons that release serotonin, making natural happiness harder to reach. Physically, it can overheat your body, dehydrate you, and in rare cases, cause organ failure. It's called a love drug because it makes you feel connected to everyone, but when it's over, you realize that connection was chemical, not real, and your brain's left paying the price.
LSD. LSD is a hallucinogen, a mind-bending chemical that completely rewires how your brain processes reality. It's usually taken on tiny papers placed on the tongue, and the amount you ingest is microscopic, measured in millionths of a gram. Once it hits, LSD binds to serotonin receptors, particularly one called 5-HT2A, which helps shape perception and mood. That's when the onset begins. Patterns start moving, colors shift, sounds seem to glow. It's not like seeing hallucinations appear, it's like reality itself starts breathing. At the peak, which can last for hours, time loses meaning. Your sense of self, the part of your brain that says, "I'm me," dissolves. You might feel connected to the universe, euphoric, terrified, or both. Emotions become physical. Music feels alive. The boundaries between thoughts and sensations blur until everything feels like one continuous wave. Then comes the come-down, slow, gentle, like returning from orbit. Reality rebuilds itself piece by piece. You might feel calm, reflective, or emotionally drained. Some people describe it as a reset, others as being rewired. LSD isn't physically addictive, but it's unpredictable. The same dose can be bliss or nightmare, depending on your mindset and environment. It can also trigger flashbacks or anxiety long after the trip is over. LSD opens the mind, but it doesn't always close the door cleanly behind it.
Ketamine. Ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic, originally designed for surgery. It's used medically today in small doses to treat depression, but recreationally, it's taken for its out-of-body effects. It's snorted as a powder or injected in liquid form. When it enters your system, ketamine blocks a chemical messenger called glutamate, which helps your brain process sensory input and maintain awareness. The onset comes fast. Within minutes, the world starts to feel distant, muffled, almost dreamlike. At the peak, perception detaches completely. You might feel like you're floating above your body, or watching your life from a distance, what users call the K-hole. Time stops making sense. You might see yourself from the outside, or feel like you've left your body entirely. It's not always pleasant. For some, it's peaceful. For others, terrifying. As the come-down begins, awareness slowly returns. Vision clears, speech reconnects, but the world still feels foggy. For a short while, it can leave you strangely calm, like your thoughts are moving underwater. Ketamine isn't classically addictive, but it builds tolerance fast. Heavy use can cause memory problems, bladder damage, and emotional numbness. It can disconnect you from pain, but also from meaning. It's a drug that separates body from mind, and sometimes they don't fully meet again. Opioids. Opioids are painkillers that come from the opium poppy, or are made synthetically in labs. They're used medically as morphine or oxycodone, but on the street, they show up as heroin or fentanyl. They're swallowed, smoked, snorted, or injected, and all work the same way. They attach to opioid receptors in your brain and body, blocking pain and flooding you with euphoria. The onset brings warmth, comfort, and relief. A deep, heavy calm that feels like safety itself. Pain fades, stress disappears, and your body melts. It's not an energetic high. It's like sinking into the world's softest blanket. At the peak, everything slows. Breathing becomes shallow, your heartbeat slows, and thoughts drift. It's bliss, but dangerously close to unconsciousness. Many users chase that feeling, but each time it's shorter, weaker, harder to reach. Then comes the come down, and it's brutal. Anxiety, muscle pain, nausea, sweating, insomnia. Every nerve in your body screams for the drug again. That's withdrawal. It doesn't just make you want more. It makes life unbearable without it. Opioids are among the most addictive substances known. They rewire the brain's survival system, teaching it that the drug is as essential as air. Over time, they destroy tolerance, organs, relationships, everything. The warmth they give in the beginning is the same warmth they take away from everything else in life.
Methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is a powerful stimulant, a chemical that floods your brain with dopamine and adrenaline, supercharging everything at once. It's often taken by smoking, swallowing, snorting, or injection, and within seconds, it hits like a lightning bolt. As the onset begins, energy explodes. Your heart races, your mind sharpens, and every sense turns up to maximum volume. You feel awake, unstoppable, invincible. Talk becomes fast, thoughts move quicker than words, and sleep feels completely optional. At the peak, the rush is pure intensity. Confidence turns into euphoria. Motivation becomes obsession. You might clean your whole house, talk for hours, or chase a goal that suddenly feels like destiny. It feels like control, but your brain's just burning through its entire dopamine supply in one go. Then comes the come down, and it's harsh. Energy vanishes. The mind crashes into exhaustion, depression, and paranoia. The world feels gray, slow, and empty. A chemical hangover that can last for days. Meth is extremely addictive. Each high rewires your brain to crave that rush again, while destroying the system that creates pleasure naturally. Over time, it leads to severe weight loss, insomnia, hallucinations, and memory loss. Meth gives you energy that feels infinite, until you realize it's stolen from your future self. Psilocybin, better known as magic mushrooms, is a hallucinogen found in certain fungi. It's eaten raw, brewed as tea, or ground into capsules. Once consumed, the body converts psilocybin into psilocin, which interacts with serotonin receptors in the brain. The onset starts within half an hour. Your senses sharpen, patterns shimmer, and reality begins to ripple. Laughter comes easily. Music feels alive. You're aware of everything at once. Your body, your breath, the air around you. At the peak, perception transforms completely. Colors pulse, time stretches, and you may feel a deep connection to nature, memory, or emotion. Some describe it as enlightenment, others as chaos. It's like your mind dissolves into something bigger, beautiful or overwhelming, depending on what you bring into it. As the come down arrives, thoughts settle. The world slowly rebuilds itself. You might feel peaceful, grateful, or emotionally open. But for some, it leaves confusion or anxiety that lingers for days. Psilocybin isn't physically addictive, but it's powerful. It can help people break old patterns, or, in the wrong setting, trigger panic or psychosis. Mushrooms don't show you something new. They just pull back the curtain on what's already in your mind. Benzodiazepine. Benzodiazepines, or benzos, are sedatives prescribed to treat anxiety, panic attacks, or insomnia. They're usually taken as pills, and they work by enhancing GABA, a brain chemical that slows down activity and brings calm. After swallowing one, the onset feels like relief. Muscles loosen, thoughts quiet, and the world stops feeling so sharp. Your heart slows, your body relaxes, and stress drifts away like fog. At the peak, everything feels soft and distant. Worry fades, time drifts, and sleep comes easily. But as the come down starts, drowsiness turns to confusion, memory slips, and emotion flattens. With frequent use, the brain forgets how to stay calm without it. Benzos are highly addictive, especially when used beyond prescription. Over time, tolerance builds fast, meaning you need more for the same calm. Stopping suddenly can cause anxiety, tremors, or even seizures, a withdrawal that can be dangerous without medical help. They quiet your mind, but silence can be addictive. The danger isn't the calm they bring, it's how easily they convince you that you can't live without it.
Weird financial habits that secretly make you richer. Spending money to save time. Most people think getting rich means spending less, cutting subscriptions, skipping takeout, doing everything yourself. But the wealthiest people spend more, and they do it on purpose. They buy back time.
Paying for grocery delivery, cleaning help, or software that automates boring work seems wasteful, until you realize time is the only thing that can't be replaced. Every hour you outsource becomes an hour you can spend earning, thinking, or resting, all things that multiply over time. The average person trades time for money. The rich trade money for time. It's not about luxury, it's about leverage. If your time is worth $50 an hour and you can pay someone $20 to handle it, you're not being lazy, you're compounding productivity. Over years, this flips your entire financial trajectory. People who hoard time tasks stay stuck working in their life. People who buy back time start working on it. The poor save dollars. The rich save hours. And hours, unlike money, never come back once they're spent. Measuring purchases in hours. Here's a habit that quietly rewires your brain. Stop measuring money in dollars. Measure it in time. Every purchase becomes a trade between your wallet and your life. A $60 dinner isn't $60. It's 2 or 3 hours of your time. A $1,000 phone is 40 hours of your life. When you see time instead of price, your brain suddenly gets honest about what matters. That's why people who think this way spend less, not because they're frugal, but because they've connected money to meaning. When something costs 10 hours, you ask yourself, is this really worth a full day of my life? Usually the answer's no. The key is that you stop chasing the short dopamine hits of spending and start valuing free time like income. The wealthy already think this way. As I said in the last section, the rich buy time instead of spending it. Using debt to your advantage. Debt is one of those words that scares people, and rightfully so. Bad debt traps you. It's the quicksand of the financial world, easy to step into and nearly impossible to escape. But used right, debt becomes a sort of leverage, one that multiplies your effort far beyond what saving ever could. It's how businesses scale, homeowners build equity, and investors grow faster than inflation. Debt is a tool. It just depends who's holding it. Poor debt buys comfort. Rich debt buys freedom. A car loan for a luxury model bleeds you and holds you down. A loan for property that appreciates pays you back. Most people think of debt as something to fear, but the smart ones treat it like rented speed. Dangerous if uncontrolled, but powerful in skilled hands. The key isn't avoiding debt. It's making sure the thing you borrow for grows faster than the interest you owe. That's how fortunes are built. But if used wrong, debt owns you. Refusing to save every penny. It sounds irresponsible, refusing to save. But here's the paradox. People who try to save every penny almost never get rich. They're too focused on defense, never offense. Saving is survival, not what helps you grow. If all you do is cut costs, your entire financial world shrinks around what's safe. But when you spend strategically on things that expand income, like tools, skills, or relationships, you break that ceiling. The rich don't obsess over $5 coffees. They obsess over $50,000 opportunities. Hoarding money builds fear. Investing it builds momentum. You don't get wealthy by being cheap. You get wealthy by being efficient. When every dollar has to be justified, none of them get to grow. Money has a purpose: to move, to build and multiply. And if you trap it under your mattress, it stops being money at all. It just becomes paper. Investing into yourself. This one feels weird because it looks selfish, spending on yourself instead of saving. But investing into yourself is the single highest return asset class in existence. Courses, coaches, therapy, mentors, fitness, they all seem expensive until you realize how much they change your output. Another way to invest into yourself is paying for accountability. Most people rely on motivation, but motivation is unreliable. Accountability makes progress automatic. The money you spend to have someone expect something from you, a deadline, a deliverable, a goal, forces you to become the kind of person who doesn't waste potential. When you pay for something, you pay attention to it. That's why people who invest in their own growth accelerate faster. They attach real cost to not making progress. Avoiding good deals. Everyone loves a deal. 30% off, buy one, get one, limited time only. I could go on forever.
But that feeling of winning at spending is what keeps most people broke. A deal is still an expense. The discount doesn't matter if you didn't need it in the first place. That's the trap. Sales make you feel smart for losing money slower. Wealthy people don't chase deals because they know attention is the real cost. Every good deal steals focus and time you could spend earning or creating. Discounts are marketing, not miracles. Imagine you got offered 50% off of an item that was marked up twice the original price. You've just been manipulated by marketing into buying something for the normal price. The rich measure value by utility instead of a simple price. If something improves their life, they pay full price. If it doesn't, it's overpriced even at 90% off. Good deals keep poor people busy saving pennies. It's better to pay full price for something you need than get 90% off something you don't need.
Overpaying on purpose. Overpaying on purpose feels stupid. Why give away more than you owe? But that's exactly why it works. It's not about wasting money. It's about rewiring how you think about it. Most people live in survival mode, always calculating the bare minimum. The minimum payment, the cheapest option, the lowest bid. Overpaying flips that psychology. When you round up payments, send extra toward your credit card, or pay bills early, you teach your brain that money isn't something to hoard in fear. It's a tool you control. The act itself builds an abundance mentality. Instead of, I can't afford this, your mind starts thinking, I'm ahead. And this changes everything. You gain peace, not pressure. Your debts shrink faster. Your relationships with money and people become cleaner because you stop nickel and diming life.
Spending on mistakes. We're taught that every mistake costs money. The wealthy treat mistakes differently. They spend on them intentionally. Buying cheap gear, outsourcing too soon, or paying someone else's fee might feel like a bad purchase, but in reality, it's a strategic risk. The lesson costs less than the opportunity lost by inaction. They pay for clarity, not comfort. The moment you stop trying to avoid all mistakes is the moment you start learning fast. Each failed experiment becomes a data point, each misstep a calibration. Wealth doesn't come from getting everything right. It comes from correcting courses quickly. So spending a little now to know that won't work saves a lot later in wasted time and compounded indecision. Mistakes cost money, yes, but indecision costs years. And if there's anything you should have taken from this video so far, it's that wealthy people prefer to waste money than time. Emotionally detaching yourself from money. Most people live in emotional debt to their bank balance. When they have money, they feel safe. When they don't, they panic. The wealthy learn to detach from that cycle. They see money as a tool, not as a mood indicator. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means not depending. When your emotions rise and fall with your income, you make desperate choices, chasing quick wins, selling too soon, buying too fast. Emotional neutrality is what keeps investors calm when markets crash, and creators focused when results lag. The rich treat money like oxygen, essential but invisible once it's flowing. They track it, respect it, but never let it define their self-worth. Because the moment money controls how you feel, it starts controlling what you do.
Ignoring windfalls. When most people get a small financial win, a refund, a bonus, a random crypto gain, they celebrate by spending it. But the rich usually do nothing. They act like it never happened. Every unplanned dollar quietly becomes an invisible worker, invested, automated, or saved for the next opportunity. It's psychological training. Ignoring the dopamine hit of sudden money builds control. It's not the big wins that create wealth. It's how you handle the small ones. Every time you treat a surprise dollar like just another tool, you strengthen the habit that builds freedom. When you stop letting extra money feel extra, you stop resetting your progress every time life gives you a lucky break.
Taking risks on purpose. Most people think rich people love risk, but the truth is they train for it. They take small, controlled risks constantly, so big ones don't scare them later. It's not gambling, it's building tolerance. Every decision that feels uncertain, starting a side project, changing careers, investing early, is a rep in risk training. The poor avoid that feeling, the rich seek it, Because there's no path to wealth that doesn't go straight through risk. It's the toll gate between comfort and freedom, and you can't skip it. Risk isn't what loses people money. Panic does. The wealthy learn to separate fear from danger, to act before everything feels safe. Every fortune started with someone who stepped into uncertainty on purpose. The goal isn't to eliminate risk, it's to get so familiar with it that you stop needing certainty to move forward. Only buy things you can afford. Most people think, can I buy this means, do I have the money? But the rich think differently. They ask, can I afford this? There's a huge gap between the two. You can purchase almost anything with debt, credit, or sacrifice, but you can only afford what won't change your stress level after you buy it. If it steals sleep, time, or future freedom, it's not affordable, it's just available. The wealthy measure affordability in peace of mind, not price tags. They buy slowly, deliberately, only when it costs them nothing beyond money. Because the truth is, being able to buy something doesn't make you rich. Being able to buy it and feel nothing afterward does. Using envy as power. Most people waste envy. They treat it like poison. The wealthy use it like data. When they feel jealous, they don't hide from it, they study it. Because envy points directly to the gap between what you want and what you've built. If you feel it, it means something in you recognizes possibility. Instead of resenting that person, they reverse engineer them. Habits, systems, mindset, until they turn jealousy into a map. It's your emotional navigator, showing exactly where your next level lives. The poor try to silence envy. The rich try to decode it. Because you can't transform what you won't look at. Every feeling of why not me is a mirror saying it could be. The difference is what you do next.
How to reprogram your brain to crave hard work.
Finish what you start. Your brain is wired to chase closure. Every time you finish something, it can be anything, even something as small as washing the last dish, sending the email, completing a workout, you trigger a chemical reward, dopamine, that makes you feel good and urges your brain to do it again. That small burst is how momentum is built in your life. Most people never reach it because they quit halfway, chasing easier pleasures that deliver quick hits of dopamine. The brain learns that avoidance feels safer than completion, and the cycle repeats. To your brain, it can do easier work but still receive dopamine. So why would it even bother doing the harder but more beneficial task? If you change your mindset and you push through and close the loop, you're teaching yourself that effort pays off more than escape. Finishing becomes its own addiction. It doesn't have to be huge, just something with a clear end. Read 10 pages of a book or complete that last rep. Every small win rewires the system in your brain. Over time, your brain stops craving the comfort of quitting and starts craving the satisfaction of being done. I bet a lot of you watching won't even make it to the end of this video. A decent amount of people are already gone. This just proves how a complete video with constant moving and a voiceover isn't enough stimulation for your brain to want to continue watching. Take boring breaks. Most people sabotage their discipline in the moments they call rest. They work for an hour on a mildly stimulating and mildly rewarding task, but it's easy. But then they take a break and flood their brain with hyperstimulation, scrolling at 100 miles per hour, gaming, eating an extremely unhealthy meal. They do all of these things and then expect to return to focus as if nothing happened. Your brain has now got a new baseline for dopamine. Remember, dopamine is the chemical that causes motivation. So now, your brain will only be motivated to do things that release as much dopamine as scrolling, gaming, or eating junk food. Good luck finding any hard work that fits in that category. The next task can't compete with the thrill you just gave yourself, so you start to avoid it. The fix isn't removing breaks. You want to change how you spend them. Let your rest be boring. Stretch, walk, stare at the ceiling, make tea. Give your mind space to breathe instead of drowning in noise. When your downtime stops spiking your senses, returning to effort feels natural again. You may even be motivated to get back to work. Do one thing at a time. Your brain isn't built for multitasking. Every time you switch tasks, checking a message mid-set, glancing at a notification, flipping between tabs, you force your mind to restart the focus process from zero. That restart costs time, but more importantly, it kills momentum. This relates back to the point, finish what you start, I talked about first.
Multitasking feels productive because your hands are busy, but cognitively, it's not working. Your attention is split, and being able to use your brain in depth becomes impossible. The fix is very simple, but it's not easy. When you eat, eat. You don't need to have a Sidemen Among Us video playing before every meal. When you work, focus on the task at hand and check your phone after. Try this. Try going to the toilet without taking your phone. Don't try to merge everything into one endless stream of half focus. Single tasking rebuilds the mental pathways that let you drop into flow, that rare zone where time disappears and effort feels easy. That is the optimal state for working on hard things, and cannot be achieved when you're doom scrolling while finishing your assignment.
The 2-minute rule. Starting something is always the hardest and most intimidating part. Your brain exaggerates how painful a task will be, so it talks you into waiting for motivation, forcing you to procrastinate. The fix to this is super simple. Lower the entry cost. Tell yourself you'll just do it for 2 minutes. You can write 1 sentence, stretch for 1 song, vacuum 1 room. That tiny action tricks your brain into crossing the line between thinking and doing. Once you've started something, the resistance to that task disappears and momentum takes over. Most of the time, you'll end up going longer without even noticing. You don't need to commit to the whole thing, just the first step. This isn't about finishing fast or only doing 2 minutes of work. It's about proving to your brain that work isn't dangerous. Once you start, it's really easy to keep going.
Cut cheap dopamine. I know most of you watching won't cut out all cheap dopamine, so I've got something in the next point if that is you. But if you are willing to cut out all forms of cheap dopamine, your brain will rewire very quickly, and then you will nearly instantly crave hard work. Think about it logically. You remove any and all things that give you cheap dopamine. Things like your phone, video games, YouTube, Netflix, junk food, a vape, or any sort of nicotine. Then the only way your brain can possibly get dopamine is through doing something hard, which is why you clicked on this video in the first place. But for most people, they don't want to completely get rid of all of those things. So here's something else you can do. Dopamine loading. Every day you wake up, your dopamine levels have generally reset pretty well. The same goes for your dopamine baseline. This can be used to your advantage, but most people use it to their disadvantage. The second they wake up, they hop straight onto TikTok, doom scrolling in bed, which, as you know by now, is a massive dopamine spike. But they then get up and try to go to work, or study, or do some sort of difficult task, which won't release anywhere near as much dopamine, because your brain wants to keep increasing the levels it's releasing, and the hard, boring work just doesn't release the same amount. This makes it very difficult to actually get the work done. You will feel bored, annoyed, and won't be able to hold your focus for very long at all. Here's how you can actually use it to your advantage. When you wake up in the morning, you need to focus on doing the things you need to do, rather than things that release a lot of dopamine. Wake up, have a shower, and get straight into work, studying, whatever it is that you have to do. As the day goes on, maintain this state of low dopamine, which actually feels high, until you reach the end of your day when you're not going to be trying to do any more low dopamine tasks. Once you reach the end of your work, then you can start loading in all of the high dopamine, low effort tasks, like doom scrolling and junk food. If that was difficult to understand, you want to do the tasks in your day starting from low dopamine releasing tasks and moving up into high dopamine releasing tasks. That way your baseline will not drop throughout the entire day. Adopting a growth mindset. Most people work hard for some outcome that comes once they finish the hard work. Maybe it's money or it's a social outcome, which is great and perfectly fine. But working hard at something for only the sake of a reward that comes after can make the work a lot more challenging, as well as deter you from wanting to work hard again in the future. Switching your view to a growth mindset, which is putting yourself in the mindset of striving to be better, rewarding the hard work and effort you put in along the way rather than just the final outcome. You see the hard work as something that is great, even though it may feel bad in the moment. Being able to do this simple mindset switch allows your brain to release dopamine when you're experiencing a challenge or some sort of friction. But this is actually impossible when you are only focused on the goal or the reward that comes at the end of all of your hard work. When you are able to attach pain, hardship, and friction to an internal reward system, even if it's just being proud of yourself, you will start to be able to access the dopamine release during the actual hard work, not just after you achieve the reward. This not only makes the hard work more enjoyable, you actually make it less painful. You make yourself more efficient at the task, and you make yourself more likely to engage in that activity again next time around. So when you're doing something hard, be happy that it is hard, and keep going. Hard work is where you find the biggest rewards. Dopamine stacking. Most people don't realize how much they overload their brain's reward system. Some people may think smashing pre-workout, pumping loud music, and doing some hard exercise is amazing for you. And while it may be good for your workout and body, this is called dopamine stacking, where you stack multiple dopamine-releasing activities on top of each other. While it may help during the exact task, afterwards you will have a dip in your dopamine baseline. Not only that, if you ever try to work out without the music and pre-workout, you will be much less inclined to actually do the hard work, because your brain won't have that extra dopamine release. Now this can be a good thing. You can stack a task that releases dopamine at the same time you start a hard task you don't want to do, tricking your brain into releasing dopamine and making you motivated to do work you might not have previously wanted to do. Dopamine stacking can get dangerous when people do things like watch TV, scroll on their phone, and eat junk food all at the same time, then wonder why they can't focus on a less stimulating task. If that's you, avoid it if you want any chance at actually being able to do hard work.
Deliberately do hard things. Your brain only adapts when it's challenged. Every time you avoid something difficult, not having a cold shower, not doing a tough workout, avoiding an uncomfortable conversation, you teach your brain that comfort equals safety and discomfort equals danger. But the nervous system learns from exposure, not avoidance. When you deliberately do something hard, you trigger a small stress response in your body. Your heart rate rises, adrenaline spikes, but after you complete it, your body releases dopamine and serotonin as a reward for overcoming that stress. Over time, your brain begins to associate effort with relief. That's the entire point of discipline training, to make discomfort familiar. You don't need to go extreme and be the most disciplined person in the world. You just need to be consistent. Lift heavier than you want to a couple times a week. Speak when you think you should stay quiet. Wake up when it's the last thing in the world you want to do. Every deliberate hardship tells your brain the same thing. We can handle this. And eventually, it stops resisting hard work, and it actually chases it. Gamify hard work. This one might not work for everyone, but turning hard work into a video game is a great way to make the hard work easier. Your brain loves games because games make effort visible. You can see progress, track points, and get rewarded for action, not just outcomes. You can see how this one links to the growth mindset section. Hard work often feels endless and abstract, so your brain doesn't know when to celebrate. You can fix that by turning your work into a system that feeds the same reward loops games use. Keep a score for how many little tasks you can do in a set amount of time. Then reward yourself if you hit a new record, or just race the clock. Assign yourself levels and missions instead of vague goals like be productive. Each small win releases a burst of motivation, reminding your brain that progress feels good. The trick is to make the challenge hard enough to stay interesting, but make it achievable enough to stay rewarding. If you manage to gamify every area of your life where you want to improve, you will improve crazy fast. Work with other people. Hard work is contagious. Your brain mirrors the behavior of whoever it's around. This is a built-in system called social mirroring. If you spend time with people who focus deeply, delay comfort, and take pride in effort, your nervous system copies that rhythm without you realizing it. The opposite is true too. When you spend time around constant distraction and your brain normalizes avoidance, you will find it much harder to get stuff done. Working alongside others creates shared pressure, shared standards, and subtle accountability. There is the natural human desire where people don't want to look or feel lazy. If you sit around with 3 hardworking friends and you are doom-scrolling while eating chips, you will feel lazy, which your body will naturally use as motivation to do the hard work. Even silent co-working changes your output, because your brain interprets other people's focus as a cue to do the same. Humans evolved to perform best in groups, where effort meant survival. Surround yourself with people who treat discipline the same way, and your brain will naturally start seeing hard work as being a part of a group and surviving. Dopamine detox. This buzzword has been spread across all social media in the past few years, and most people probably don't actually know what it actually does. The world is built so that you can have a million forms of stimulation at your fingertips. A dopamine detox is a short reset for your baseline of stimulation and dopamine. It allows you to come back down from the high of the modern world's constant stimulation and lets you think more clearly about what you want and how to get it. You're essentially removing all artificial dopamine sources, like junk food, caffeine, scrolling, video games, and so on, so that your brain starts generating dopamine and motivation for natural sources, like working on something hard, making progress, and small day-to-day activities. The first few days will be excruciating. Your brain will be constantly searching for a quick hit of dopamine, but once you manage to withhold for a few days, something clicks. Silence starts to feel nice instead of your brain panicking for stimulation. Your focus returns, and you start appreciating small things, like simple exercise. Essentially, in a dopamine detox, you reset your baseline for dopamine and rewire what your brain rewards you for, changing it from instant gratification sources of dopamine to meaningful sources that will actually improve your life. The one thing you cannot do is go straight back to all the artificial sources for dopamine once you finish a dopamine detox. That is the time for working on hard things.
If there is only one thing that you learn from this video, let it be this. If you are trying to do hard things, make sure you do the hard things before the easy, or you're going to make the hard thing even harder.
The hidden advantages of every personality type.
The inspector. The inspector is the person who actually reads the instruction manual twice. They're practical, grounded, and allergic to chaos. If life were a group project, they're the ones setting up the spreadsheet while everyone else is still figuring out what the assignment even is. They value order, rules, systems, routines. To an inspector, stability isn't boring. It's freedom. They know where things are, how things work, and what happens if you cut corners, because they've already checked 3 times. These are the people who balance the budget, fix the printer, and show up on time even when the invite was vague. But it's not just about rules. At their core, inspectors are loyal. If they commit to something, a job, a friend, a promise, they follow through, even when it's inconvenient. Some call them rigid, but inspectors would call it dependable. The downside? They can struggle when the world refuses to play by the rules they love so much. Sudden change? Last-minute improvisation? That's their nightmare. But give them a plan, a process, and some peace and quiet, and they'll quietly keep the world turning while everyone else is panicking. The campaigner. The campaigner is basically human caffeine. Walk into a room, and suddenly the vibes are louder, the jokes are faster, and you're somehow agreeing to go on a road trip at 2 a.m. with people you just met. These are the people who treat sleep as more of a suggestion than a requirement. They're idea machines, constantly brainstorming, constantly starting projects. Finishing them? That's optional. A campaigner's Google Drive is a graveyard of abandoned side hustles, half-written novels, and business pitches that sounded genius at 3 in the morning. But here's the thing. You can't stay mad at them. They're charming, infectious. They make you believe that, yes, you should quit your job, move to Bali, and start a kombucha empire. And even if it crashes and burns, you'll at least have a great story. The flip side? Chaos. The nurturer. The nurturer is the person who remembers your birthday, your dog's name, and that weird story you told them 3 years ago about getting stuck in an elevator. They're loyal, attentive, and always looking out for the people they care about. In a group, they're the quiet anchor. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one you can actually depend on. They thrive on responsibility. If something needs to get done, they'll take it on, even if it means staying up late to finish the work no one else wanted. Some people call them selfless. Others call them people pleasers. The truth is somewhere in between. They want harmony. They want others to feel safe. But sometimes that means they forget about their own needs. The downside? They can burn out from giving too much. But when balanced, nurturers are the steady heartbeat of any family, team, or friendship circle, quietly holding everything together while the world spins. The mastermind. The mastermind doesn't just play the game. They're 3 moves ahead, already planning how to win. Strategic, private, relentless. They live in their own mental war room, constantly running scenarios. While others react, they calculate. They crave improvement, precision, and control. To a mastermind, perfection isn't optional. It's expected. They're not interested in small talk or sugarcoating.
They want systems, logic, results. That intensity can make them feel cold, even intimidating. But underneath is a drive to build something lasting, something that actually works. The danger? They can isolate themselves, convinced no one else can keep up. They might dismiss emotions as weakness, forgetting that not everything can be solved with a blueprint. But when a mastermind finds balance, pairing their ruthless vision with patience and humanity, they don't just succeed, they change entire worlds.
The virtuoso. The virtuoso is the person who sees a locked door and immediately thinks, I wonder if I can pick that. They're hands-on, impulsive, and allergic to boredom. If there's a problem, they'll take it apart, mess with it, and probably fix it, or at least break it in a more interesting way. They live for the moment. Planning, schedules, that's prison. A virtuoso wants to dive headfirst into action, whether it's building something in their garage, booking a trip on a whim, or convincing their friends to try cliff diving at 2 a.m. The catch? Commitment is not their strong suit. They can be flaky, restless, and allergic to anything that feels repetitive. But the upside is that life with a virtuoso is never dull. They bring energy, risk, and a little bit of chaos. And sometimes, that's exactly what a stagnant world needs. The artist. The artist moves through the world like life itself is a canvas. Quiet, gentle, and deeply sensitive. They see beauty where others see nothing. A crack in the sidewalk. A song half heard. The way sunlight cuts through dusty blinds. It all carries meaning. They live in the moment, following their feelings like a compass. To them, rules are suggestions, and conformity feels like suffocation. They'd rather paint outside the lines, literally or metaphorically, than march to someone else's beat. That freedom makes them creative, compassionate, and unpredictable. But it's not always easy being this attuned. Their emotions can swing hard, leaving them vulnerable to self-doubt or pulling away when the world feels too sharp. Still, when they open up, they bring color to everyone around them, turning ordinary days into something quietly extraordinary. The mediator. The mediator lives with one foot in reality and the other in a world only they can see. They're dreamers, idealists, and quiet warriors for what feels true and meaningful. To them, life isn't about climbing ladders or chasing trophies. It's about staying connected to purpose, to values, to the things that make your soul feel alive. They're compassionate to a fault, always seeing the good in people, even when it's buried deep. But that kindness can also trap them. They'll forgive too much, stay too long, or lose themselves in someone else's story. Their inner world is vivid and rich, but it can make the outside world feel heavy, even hostile. Still, when they channel that imagination into action, mediators inspire change. They remind us that the quietest voices often carry the deepest truths. The thinker. The thinker is the kid who took apart the toaster just to see how it worked. Analytical, curious, and slightly allergic to small talk, they spend more time in their head than anywhere else. For them, the world is one giant puzzle, and every question is another piece waiting to be solved. They thrive on theory, not what is, but what could be. They'll happily debate abstract ideas for hours, then forget to eat lunch because they got lost in thought. On the plus side, they're inventive and original. On the downside, don't expect them to remember where they left their keys. The thinker's weakness? They can get so wrapped up in concepts that reality feels like an afterthought. But when they balance their endless curiosity with just enough practicality, they're the ones who rewrite the rules the rest of us live by. The dynamo. The dynamo is pure adrenaline in human form. These are the people who treat speed limits as suggestions and think responsibility is just a funny word adults made up. If something looks risky, they're already halfway through doing it before anyone else has finished saying, bad idea. They live for the thrill. Fast cars, big bets, last-minute decisions. To them, the safe option is the boring option. They're magnetic, reckless, and somehow always have a story that starts with, so there I was, and ends with, and that's how I wound up in the ER. But beneath the chaos, dynamos are problem solvers. Put them in a crisis, and they'll find a way out while everyone else is panicking. The problem? Stability feels like a trap. They're always chasing the next high. Still, when the world needs someone bold enough to jump first, the dynamo is already in the air. The performer. The performer was basically born with a spotlight overhead. They walk into a room and instantly become the main character, whether they planned it or not. Loud, fun, and effortlessly magnetic, they thrive on attention the way plants thrive on sunlight. These are the friends who'll convince you to go out on a Tuesday, spend too much money, and end up dancing on a table, and somehow make you feel like it was the best decision of your life. They're entertainers, charmers, natural mood boosters. But here's the catch. The party never lasts forever. When the music stops, performers can struggle with the silence. They hate boredom, avoid responsibility, and sometimes cover insecurity with charisma. Still, when they're balanced, they remind everyone around them that life isn't meant to be endured. It's meant to be enjoyed.
The debater. The debater doesn't argue because they're angry. They argue because it's fun. For them, every conversation is a battlefield, and every opinion is an invitation to spar. They'll switch sides mid-argument just to see if they can still win. They're quick, clever, and endlessly curious. Rules? Boundaries? Sacred cows? All fair game to poke holes in. They thrive in chaos, in brainstorming, in tossing out ideas that make everyone else stop and say, wait, could that actually work? The downside? Subtlety is not their specialty. They can steamroll people without realizing it, turning debates into destruction. But when a debater learns to use that energy for innovation instead of just provocation, they're not just entertaining. They're unstoppable. The executive? The executive is order incarnate. Structured, decisive, and commanding, they're the ones who make sure things get done, whether people like it or not. In their world, there's a right way to do things, and wasting time isn't on the list. They're natural organizers, the type who can walk into chaos and leave behind a working system. To them, efficiency isn't optional. It's sacred. That drive makes them reliable leaders, the kind who can keep a team on track when everything else is falling apart. But strength comes with shadows. Executives can be rigid, dismissive of nuance, and impatient with anyone who doesn't keep up. They risk becoming so focused on rules and results that they forget about people. Yet, when they strike the balance, executives don't just maintain order. They build structures that last. The provider. The provider is the friend who remembers to bring snacks, checks if you got home safe, and somehow manages to organize the group chat chaos into an actual plan. They live for connection, for making sure the people around them feel cared for. To them, kindness isn't just nice, it's necessary. They're generous with their time, their energy, and their attention. Providers want harmony, and they'll go out of their way to smooth over conflict before it even starts. But that same generosity can be a trap. They can become so focused on helping others that they forget their own needs. Still, at their best, providers are the glue in any community. They keep relationships strong, make traditions matter, and remind everyone what it feels like to belong. The protagonist. The protagonist walks into a room and people notice, not because they're loud, but because they carry purpose, like a torch. Charismatic, persuasive, and driven, they see potential in people before those people even see it in themselves. They thrive on leadership, not for the power, but for the chance to guide others towards something bigger. Protagonists believe in causes, in missions, in the possibility of changing the world. That passion is magnetic, inspiring others to follow them even when the path isn't clear. The risk? They can burn themselves out trying to save everyone. They may push too hard, convinced they know what's best. But when their passion is paired with humility, protagonists become the kind of leaders who don't just talk about change, they make it happen.
The commander doesn't ask if something can be done. They ask who's going to do it, and when it'll be finished. Bold, decisive, and relentless, they're natural leaders who thrive in competition. To them, Obstacles are just puzzles waiting to be solved, preferably faster than anyone else. They see inefficiency as the enemy, and they'll bulldoze through excuses without a second thought. That makes them powerful, but also intimidating. Commanders can come off as ruthless, pushing people harder than they push themselves, which is saying something. But here's the thing. They don't drive people out of cruelty. They do it because they see potential and won't accept less than excellence. When tempered with empathy, commanders aren't just leaders. They're visionaries who get results others only dream about. The advocate. The advocate is rare, quiet, but intense. They carry depth like a secret, seeing patterns and truths most people miss. While others skim the surface, advocates dive into meaning, searching for purpose in everything they do. They're compassionate, but not naive, kind, but not weak. When they care about something, it isn't casual. It's consuming. They'll sacrifice comfort, time, even relationships to stay true to their vision of what's right. That integrity is powerful, but it can also be isolating, because advocates often feel like outsiders, misunderstood even by people close to them. But when they find their voice, they don't just speak, they move people. They're the quiet revolutionaries, the visionaries who change the world not by force, but by the sheer gravity of their conviction.
Every social hack explained.
The compliment combo. Imagine you're at a party, the kind of place where the music's a little too loud, the lighting's just dim enough to obscure familiar faces, and the social battery is already draining even though you just walked in. You don't know anyone. Your brain's scanning the crowd like a radar pinging for anything, anyone that feels like a safe opening. Then you spot someone across the room. They're wearing a jacket that looks like it dropped straight out of a legendary loot crate in some game that values style as much as stats. It's bold, it's unique, it's the kind of jacket that tells a story before its owner even says a word. You walk up and compliment it, not in a generic, forgettable way, but with purpose. You highlight that specific piece, the way the colors pop, how it fits their whole vibe. Here's the secret. That kind of compliment isn't just a conversation starter, it's a social lockpick. A well-placed, thoughtful compliment cracks open the armor of awkwardness. And the real magic? It's all in the details. Skip the bland, you look nice, or the vague, cool outfit. Instead, zoom in. Compliment their mismatched socks that scream personality, the enamel pin that reveals a hidden fandom, or the way they've layered textures like they're building a character loadout. People don't remember every word you say, but they remember how you made them feel. Whether you noticed them, really saw them, and gave them a moment to shine. That's what a great compliment does. It gives someone a split second of feeling known. The name drop resurrection. You're introduced to someone new. They tell you their name, you nod, maybe smile, acknowledge it politely, and then just like that, it's gone, lost to the abyss. Your brain deletes it with the same speed it clears browser history when it's trying to protect your dignity. It's not even personal. It just happens, over and over again. Here's the fix. It's deceptively simple and wildly effective. Use their name immediately. Find a natural moment to work it in. When they mention their hobby, their work, or something they're passionate about, speak their name like you're hanging a lantern on it, lighting it up in your memory palace. What this does, beyond helping you remember, is something deeper. It makes the other person feel like they've just been elevated, like they've moved from background extra to featured character. We're all wired to respond to our own name. It cuts through noise, activates our attention like a ping on a personal radar. And when someone uses your name genuinely, early in the conversation, it feels intentional, respectful, personal. But remember, balance is key. Use it naturally, sparingly. Too much and it starts to sound like a sales pitch. Just enough, and it tells someone, you're not just another face in the crowd. You matter enough for me to remember who you are. The mirror move. There you are, mid-conversation, facing someone whose energy is wildly different from yours. They're either all caps and caffeine, or they're speaking so softly and slowly it feels like you're in a nature documentary, narrated by fog. You're not sure how to meet them in the middle, or if there is a middle. It's like tuning into a radio station that's playing static and trying to figure out the song. That's where the mirror move comes in. It's not about copying or parroting. It's about syncing. You adjust your rhythm to theirs. Not to manipulate, but to connect. If they're laid back and slow-paced, you match that ease, letting your words breathe a little. If they're full of excitement and bounce, you bring your energy up, letting your tone match their tempo. It's subtle, it's respectful, it's powerful. Because when someone feels like you're on their wavelength, the social walls drop. It feels less like a performance and more like resonance, like a dance where both people are actually hearing the music. But here's the important bit. Don't overdo it. You're not a reflection, you're still yourself. This is about harmonizing, not hiding. You're tuning your frequency to theirs, but your signal should always come through clear. The 3-second rule of entry. You spot a group deep in conversation. The circle isn't fully closed. Physically, there's a gap, but mentally, Emotionally, it feels like walking into a movie halfway through. The doubt creeps in fast. Your brain kicks into overdrive, spinning a worst-case scenario reel like, what if they all turn and stare? What if they laugh? Here's where the 3-second rule becomes your social superpower. The moment you get that gut instinct, that little internal nudge to jump in, count down from 3 and then move. No negotiating. No letting the spiral start. 3, 2, 1, go. Confidence doesn't strike like lightning. It's not waiting for the right moment. It's a decision, a bold click on the mental "Join Now" button before your brain can load the hesitation. That 3-second window, that's your portal. If you wait longer, doubt walks in and takes over the controls. Trust the impulse. Push past the hesitation. The longer you stand outside the circle, the harder it gets. But when you step in, quickly, cleanly, confidently, you shift the narrative from outsider to participant, and suddenly, you're in the scene instead of watching from the edges. The echo hack. Someone tells you about a new hobby they've picked up, say, juggling. Your instinct might be to nod, say, cool, and move on. But that's a missed opportunity. Instead, zoom in. Pick one word, like juggling, and toss it back into the conversation with curiosity. Maybe ask what they juggle with. Pins, oranges, fire. That small echo, repeating the key detail and expanding on it, does 2 incredible things. First, it signals that you were actually listening. Not just hearing sounds while waiting for your turn to speak, but really paying attention. Second, it hands the mic back to them, with an invitation to go deeper into something they care about. It's not about hijacking the moment with your own story of that one time you juggled apples at summer camp. Not yet anyway. This isn't your scene to steal. It's theirs to explore. Think of it like throwing another log on their conversational fire, giving them room to expand, illuminate, and feel heard. Echoing with intent shows presence. And in a world of half-listening and distracted replies, that kind of presence is rare and powerful. The vulnerability vibe bomb. You're locked in the polite prison of small talk. The conversation has all the depth of a kiddie pool. You've already covered traffic, the weather, and how everyone's so busy lately. It's starting to feel like you're just pressing shuffle on a playlist of polite noise. Here's your secret weapon, the vulnerability vibe bomb. It's not about revealing your deepest wounds or trauma dumping over chips and dip. It's about cracking the surface, just a little, saying something real, human, unexpected, like, honestly, I wasn't sure I'd know anyone here, and I almost bailed. That one sentence shifts the whole atmosphere. It gives the other person permission to drop their own guard, even just a little. Maybe they felt the same. Maybe they're relieved someone else said what they were thinking. Vulnerability is connective tissue. It's what turns social interaction into bonding. Used wisely, it deepens the conversation instantly. Just remember, it's not a floodgate, it's a spark. Share something small, honest, and human. That spark can light up a real connection. The exit portal. You're deep in a conversation you didn't sign up for. Someone's walking you through the multi-generational lore of their kombucha startup, and you're trapped. Your social stamina bar is flashing red. You need out, but without ghosting or looking rude. Here's your escape sequence. Craft a gentle but firm exit. Something like, I'm gonna go grab a drink, check in on a friend, hit the restroom, but it was great talking to you. It's clean, respectful, gives closure without over-explaining. Social energy is a resource. You've got a limited budget, and spending it wisely means knowing when to step away. It's not about being dismissive, it's about pacing yourself. The best exits leave no hard feelings. They offer a graceful fade, not a hard cut. Mastering the exit is just as important as mastering the intro. It keeps you in control of your time, your vibe, and your boundaries. The callback connection. You had a brief conversation with someone weeks ago. It wasn't earth-shattering, just a light moment where they mentioned their love for frogs. Maybe it was a passing comment. Maybe they had a frog tattoo or used a frog emoji in their handle. The kind of detail most people would forget. But today, you remember, and you send them a frog meme. No explanation, no fanfare, just a simple callback. And it lands. Why? Because in that moment, you've done something most people don't. You remembered. You paid attention. You saved their tiny detail like it mattered. And now you've brought it back, like a secret handshake only the two of you know. Callbacks are conversational spells. They say, I heard you. I remembered. You left a mark. They're not about the frog. They're about the connection, the invisible thread that turns passing interactions into lasting impressions. Bonus hack. The curiosity catalyst. You're mid-convo, and things are starting to dip into autopilot. They're telling you about their job, their weekend, something vaguely interesting, but delivered with that polite, just keeping the social gears turning tone. Most people would nod, smile, let the topic drift into oblivion. But not you. You've got a secret weapon. Intentional curiosity. Here's the move. Listen for the thread that isn't being pulled. The part of their sentence that feels like a door they walked past but didn't open. Maybe they said they were working on something new, or that their weekend was kinda wild. That's your moment. That's the thread. Pull it. Gently, with interest. Ask, what was wild about it? Or, what kind of project? Not interrogating. Just opening the window a little wider. Curiosity, when genuine, is magnetic. It signals that you're not just passing time. You actually want to know more. And when someone feels like you're truly interested in their world, they light up, they drop the mask, the conversation deepens. The key is to be curious about them, not just the facts. Ask about the why, the how, The feeling behind the surface? What made them start? What surprised them? What's the best part? These questions don't just keep the talk going. They turn it into something meaningful. And the best part? You don't have to be the most interesting person in the room. Just be the most interested. That's how real conversations start, and how unforgettable ones happen.
Marketing psychology you get controlled by.
The sunk cost fallacy. You went to law school. 3 years, 6 figures of debt. You passed the bar, landed a decent firm, and you hate every second of it. The work is soul-grinding. The culture is toxic. You dread Mondays like they're a funeral. But every time you think of leaving, the same thought traps you. I worked too hard to give this up. That's the sunk cost fallacy. You're confusing effort with obligation. Because you paid a steep price to be here, you assume the only way to honor that cost is to stay. But the cost is already paid. Staying miserable doesn't get you a refund. It just adds interest. This fallacy turns high achievers into high-functioning prisoners. You think quitting would make it all a waste. But what's actually wasteful? Sacrificing your future to justify a decision you made 5 years ago with a totally different version of yourself. You're not walking away from value. You're walking toward alignment, toward sanity, toward a life that fits the current version of you. And no, you're not throwing it away. You're using what you learned to stop sinking deeper. Confirmation bias, the echo chamber of doom. Imagine this. You believe something, anything. Let's say you think coffee is good for you, so you type "is coffee healthy" into a search engine. First result, coffee linked to lower risk of depression. Boom. You feel smart, informed, validated. Now pause. Did you search for the truth or for confirmation? Welcome to confirmation bias, your brain's favorite self-reinforcing trick. Instead of asking, what's accurate, you ask, what makes me feel right? And then you subconsciously cherry-pick data, experts, opinions, anything that agrees with you. Anything that doesn't, you downplay, ignore, or declare invalid. It's not just coffee. It's politics, religion, conspiracy theories, dietary choices, which sports team is superior. You think you're being logical, but you're actually running an emotional software script that says, never admit you might be wrong. This is how we build echo chambers. Tiny worlds made of identical thoughts bouncing off the walls. And the more you hear the same opinion repeated, the more true it feels. But repetition isn't proof. Consensus isn't accuracy. If you want clarity, do something radical. Actively seek out opposing views. Ask yourself how you'd know if you were wrong. Truth isn't comfortable. That's how you know it's real. Learned helplessness. Picture a dog in a cage. Every time it tries to escape, it gets shocked. Eventually, it just lies down. No more trying. Even if the door swings open, the dog stays put. That's learned helplessness. Now imagine you. You fail at something. Once, twice, maybe 3 times. Rejected job applications, awkward first dates, goals that flop. At some point, you stop trying. Not because you can't succeed, but because failure taught you to stop believing in the possibility. You tell yourself, I'm just not good at this. You confuse temporary pain with permanent truth. Learned helplessness doesn't mean you are powerless. It means you feel powerless. And those feelings become bars in a cage that doesn't even exist anymore. The worst part? You might not even notice you've given up. You just start living smaller. But there's a way out. It starts with testing the lock. Do the thing one more time. Apply again. Say what you meant to say. Try badly and try loud. Fail forward. Because once you realize the shocks have stopped, you stop being the dog. And you start being the person who leaves the cage and never looks back. And yes, the door was open the whole time. The gambler's fallacy. You're at the roulette table. The ball's landed on red 5 times in a row. People are buzzing. Black has to be next. They whisper like it's prophecy. You bet big. You're not even thinking. You just feel it. And then red again. That's the gambler's fallacy. It's your brain assigning memory to randomness. We think the universe keeps a scoreboard, that it's secretly balancing the scales. It isn't. Every spin is its own independent chaos. Past results don't predict future outcomes, especially in random systems. But this fallacy goes beyond casinos. You think you're due for a good relationship because your last 3 were train wrecks. You believe this job interview will go better because the last one didn't. You think life owes you symmetry. It doesn't. The universe isn't a slot machine with a guilt complex. It doesn't reward perseverance with fairness. It doesn't track your streaks. And clinging to the idea that it does, that's how you keep gambling time, energy, hope on patterns that don't exist. You're not cursed. You're not lucky. You're just misreading chaos as narrative. The odds don't care how badly you want it. The flip doesn't remember the last one, and neither should you. Negativity bias. 10 people say your idea was great. 1 person calls it meh. Guess which comment keeps you up at 2 a.m.? That's negativity bias. Your brain is a threat detection machine from prehistoric times where noticing danger was literally survival. Back then, ignoring one rustle in the bushes could get you eaten. Fast forward to now, and your brain's still doing it. Only now, the tigers are tweets. You're wired to give more attention, emotion, and memory to negative events. 1 bad review hits harder than 10 good ones. 1 awkward moment at the party makes you forget the fun. You remember rejection way longer than praise, and it's not your fault. It's biology. But if you don't know it's happening, it starts controlling your entire mood. You live like everything's falling apart, even if 90% of your life is actually fine. It also warps your perception of people. You zero in on flaws. You expect disappointment. You scan your inbox for conflict. And pretty soon, your whole world is just filtered through caution tape. The only antidote? Actively notice the good. Count it. Name it. Write it down. It won't come naturally, but that's the point. You're not being realistic. You're being hijacked by an ancient alarm system that forgot how to turn off. The halo effect. You meet someone new. They're charismatic, great smile, amazing taste in playlists, and before you even realize it, they're perfect, funny, insightful, emotionally mature. Basically a walking TED Talk, except they're not. Welcome to the halo effect. When your brain takes one positive trait, attractiveness, charm, intelligence, and uses it as a shortcut to assume all the other traits are just as glowing. That's how we end up trusting people who shouldn't be trusted. That's how bad ideas become gospel when delivered by someone in a nice suit. That's how con artists and cult leaders work. They start with one beam of light, and your brain fills in the rest. You don't judge people by who they are. You judge them by the glow you want them to have. And this doesn't just apply to people. Companies, politicians, brands. You see one clean logo or clever ad and assume competence, ethics, and value. But shiny isn't the same as good. The halo effect isn't about gullibility. It's about speed. Your brain loves shortcuts, but shortcuts often skip the truth. Slow down. Ask more questions. Don't let one bright spot blind you to everything else. Hyperbolic discounting. You promise yourself you'll go to bed early. Eat better. Start that novel. But then it's midnight. There's ice cream in the freezer, and Netflix says one more episode, and somehow you say yes. Again, that's hyperbolic discounting. Your brain's tendency to prioritize instant gratification over future rewards, even when the future reward is clearly better. In theory, $120 next month is better than $100 today. But your brain sees now as real and later as foggy. Future you is abstract. Present you is hungry and tired. So present you wins. Again and again and again. That's why we stay up too late, save too little, scroll too long, and skip the gym. Not because we're lazy, but because our brain discounts the value of long-term gains dramatically, especially when the reward isn't immediate. You think you're just bad at discipline. You're not. You're wired for short-term survival, not long-term planning. Future you might as well be a stranger. But here's the twist. You can trick the system. Make the future feel closer. Visualize rewards. Use timers. Set traps. Tie pleasure to progress. Because willpower alone won't win. You need to build a bridge from now to later. Otherwise, you'll keep trading gold for gum. And finally, number 1, cognitive dissonance. You call yourself a good person. You also just ghosted someone who trusted you. And now, somewhere between your ribcage and your pride, there's an itch you can't scratch. That's cognitive dissonance. It's the mental tension that sparks when your actions and your identity don't match. Your brain hates contradiction, so it rushes to resolve the discomfort, not by changing your behavior, but by rewriting your story. You tell yourself they were too clingy anyway, or I'm just bad at texting. You morph from ghoster to justified escape artist in record time. And just like that, the dissonance quiets for now. But it's not just relationships. You believe in honesty, but you lie at work. You see yourself as rational, but you rage buy crypto because your friend did. You think you're above gossip, then you forward the screenshot. Dissonance everywhere. The truth? Everyone does this. What matters is whether you notice, whether you stop and ask, do my actions reflect who I actually want to be? Or am I just storytelling my way into comfort? You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be awake, especially when your brain is busy rewriting the plot. If you found this video helpful, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Also comment if you want a part 2.